Chapter 1. In this world, there was no shortage of people born with a golden spoon in their mouths, and Wang Ling was one of them. But his background was like a fighter jet born with a golden spoon, and he had almost subverted civilization and order in the entire cultivation world. In a rather ordinary family apartment, Mr. and Mrs. Wang rocked the stroller with loving smiles on their faces. I really didn't expect our family's baby to grow so big in the blink of an eye. That's right, today is our Ling Ling's birthday. Honey, did you prepare a gift? Of course. As he spoke, the middle-aged man took out a long, thick treasure from his waist, and the woman next to him was instantly startled. Its sturdy long body was adorned with all sorts of strange gems and jewels. The moment it appeared, it was a little dazzling. The woman stared at this big treasure with a completely stunned expression. Her mouth was slightly agape, revealing her astonishment without concealing it at all. This is Chanel's flying sword. Father Wang had a proud expression on his face. I spent a full half a year's savings to specially prepare this for our Ling Ling. No one in our Wang family has ever reached the golden core stage. Honey, this flying sword is my hope for Ling Ling. In this world where cultivation and modern science were perfectly combined, the realm system had already completely replaced diplomas as the new standard for measuring a person's level of education. Poor Mr. and Mrs. Wang had never graduated from the body forging stage since they were young, and had been stuck in the preparatory class. This Chanel flying sword was a priceless flying sword in the golden core realm. Father Wang had gritted his teeth and bought it at the risk of having to eat dirt for the next few days. However, Wang Ling, who still had a pacifier in his mouth in the stroller, only glanced at it out of the corner of his eye before a look of disgust appeared on his face. This was the first time he had seen such an ugly flying sword. The most speechless thing was that this man had actually placed such an ugly sword next to his pillow, and even claimed that it was to ward off evil spirits? Ward off your sister. The four olds had been wiped out 2,000 years ago, and now it was the era of scientific cultivation. Where did this feudal remnant Timo come from? Thus speechless, Wang Ling directly stretched out his small hand, which was less than a quarter the size of Mr. Wang's palm, and with a crack, he directly broke this ugly flying sword. That year, Wang Ling had just turned 1. When Wang Ling was 1 year old, he had broken the big magic sword with his bare hands. At that time, the Wang couple directly filed a complaint to the Quality Supervision Bureau, denouncing the unscrupulous merchants who maliciously peddled fake and shoddy products. How could a mere infant break a golden core stage flying sword with his bare hands? At that time, Father Wang and Mother Wang smacked their heads and agreed that they had bought a fake Chanel flying sword. It wasn't until Wang Ling was 3 years old that the couple witnessed their son skillfully fly around the room on a small children's wooden sword. Only then did they realize that they hadn't bought a fake sword back then. They had clearly given birth to a fake son. As muggles in the cultivation world who had been stuck at the body refinement stage for many years, the Wang couple could never imagine that they had given birth to Wang Ling. Was this a genetic mutation? Or had they skipped some crucial step in the creation of a human? None of this mattered, because compared to all of this, Father Wang and Mother Wang were more convinced that Wang Ling was the chosen one whom the heavens had bestowed upon their Wang family. It was also thanks to Father Wang and Mother Wang's fortitude that Wang Ling had been able to safely get through the weakest period between the ages of 0 and 5. Otherwise, Wang Ling felt that he would have been sent to a human research institute to be dissected long ago. He might even have had the chance to appear on the relatively well-known Approaching Science program. Without any of the waves he had imagined, nor any exaggerated heavenly phenomena, Wang Ling realized that his realm had grown along with his age. On average, he would advance by 1 level at the age of 2, and even he himself didn't know why. In order not to expose his aura, Wang Ling drew a talisman according to ancient records and hid it on his right arm. He had been relying on the talisman to conceal his aura for many years, so he was safe and sound. That year, Wang Ling was 16. High school came faster than he had imagined. In order to appear relatively normal, Wang Ling had always advocated keeping a low profile in his daily life. He didn't pursue any key city high school, but chose an ordinary public high school, Number 60 High School, Peiyuan District, Songhai City. Wang Ling arrived at school, wearing only an ordinary white shirt and jeans. Looking around, apart from the stone statue at the main entrance of the school, whose features could no longer be clearly seen, and the handful of palm trees around it, the whole school was even more ordinary than he had imagined. It had to be said that if it was a genuine key city high school, all the trees on the campus would be spirit-gathering trees, and there would even be a huge spirit-gathering array under the foundation of the teaching buildings, so that students could stay focused and alert at all times during their daily studies. But these spirit-gathering arrays were of no **** use to Wang Ling. Because of the huge difference in realm, not only could he not sense the minuscule amount of spirit energy coming from the spirit-gathering array, it was also very easy for him to destroy the entire magnetic field of the array. Wang Ling didn't want to hold up other people's futures because of him. Thus, he had chosen a relatively ordinary high school. Although the environment was a little crude, Wang Ling was still very satisfied overall. At least here, it was very good for hiding his true realm. Today was number 60 high school's newcomers meet and greet, which was in fact also a general screening session. Before the new students officially enrolled, the school needed to collect each student's grades, and then rationally divide them into classes based on their grades. The elite class, the intermediate class, the ordinary class, and the remedial class. Standing in front of an LCD screen, Wang Ling followed the instructions on the screen to find the class he would be interviewing in. Given Wang Ling's usual style, he absolutely couldn't go to a place like the elite class, which would greatly increase the risk of exposing his realm. Furthermore, places like the remedial class were a little degrading to Wang Ling considering the overall situation. The intermediate class and the ordinary class were the best choices. "Excuse me, do you know how to get to grade 1 class 3? Suddenly, a sweet voice came from behind Wang Ling. Wang Ling's figure was startled. Although he had already sensed the girl's aura from afar the moment she had entered the school gates, he clearly hadn't expected her to actually talk to him. Out of the corner of his eye, Wang Ling glanced at her indifferently. She was a pretty good-looking girl. "Are you here to report in today too?" Seeing that Wang Ling didn't answer her, the unfamiliar girl continued to ask, as if they were very familiar with each other. The girl was wearing a tight-fitting white t-shirt, jeans, and casual shoes. Her long hair was elegant, and her skin was fair. Wang Ling only needed to use his spirit energy to feel her out a little, and he could immediately deduce this girl's true level. This person was definitely made for the elite class. It was destined that they would never be classmates. But as luck would have it, Wang Ling discovered that his class for the interview was actually the grade 1, class 3, that this girl had mentioned. Still not saying a word, Wang Ling pointed to a classroom not far away, where grade 1 class 3 was. Chapter 2. In his memory, this was the first time Lotus Sun had taken the initiative to strike up a conversation, and the other party didn't even react to him. She always felt that this boy in a white shirt with a refreshing black buzz cut had a completely different style from the flirtatious cheese she had seen in the past. It couldn't be said to be cold and aloof, but it had a different flavor and a strong sense of mystery, attracting Lotus Sun's attention almost immediately. "This student, are you also going for an interview with grade 1, class 3? Hey, what's your surname?" Along the way, she did her best to close the distance between her and Wang Ling, but he had his usual poker face and completely ignored her. This was rather awkward. As far as he could remember, this was the first time he had taken the initiative to show someone the way. If it wasn't for the fact that Lotus Sun also happened to be going to grade 1 class 3, he wouldn't have even bothered to lift his arm. He was tired of interacting with others, especially when he reached the soul formation stage at the age of 7 and comprehended the mind connection technique. He could hear the inner voices of the people around him almost all the time. Ever since then, his ears had never been at peace, and he had never been able to rest. Especially at night, if he didn't wear earplugs, he felt that he would go crazy. Lotus Sun, for example, seemed to be doing her best to close the distance between them, but Wang Ling could clearly hear what she was thinking. This girl was just unwilling to accept it. To be honest, Wang Ling felt that given Lotus Sun's qualifications, coming to number 60 high school was really a waste of her talent. With this kind of strength, even if he was placed in those key cities, he would definitely be among the elite students. It just so happened that Lotus Sun had chosen this place for the exact opposite purpose. Wang Ling had come up with ways to hide his identity, while Lotus Sun had come up with ways to make her presence known. There were too many top students in the city's key high school, and it was not easy to make their presence known. But in the ordinary environment of number 60 high school, Lotus Sun felt that she was absolutely in her element. Lotus Sun hadn't expected to be ignored by this kind of boy as soon as she arrived at school. F***ck. Could it be that this fellow had a cold personality? He had never thought that he would actually be targeted by a girl as soon as he arrived at school. What the F***ck? At this moment, the two of them could not help but sigh in their hearts. The current class placement interview was just like the entrance exam that was popular a few hundred years ago. The main purpose was to let every student find their own position in the school environment. There was no such thing as discrimination, although all the students who could come to know 60 high school were already at the foundation establishment stage. They were also divided into various ranks. Although late foundation establishment and early foundation establishment were only separated by 2 realms, there was a huge difference in their overall strength. They were destined to not be assigned to the same class and play happily together. In the not-so-big classroom, there were 3 interviewers sitting in order. At this moment, the classroom was already sparsely filled with boys and girls who had come for the interview. Wang Ling walked straight into the classroom and quietly found the most inconspicuous seat to sit down. The moment Lotus Sun, who had the looks of a celebrity, stepped into the classroom, she immediately attracted the attention of the dozens of men and women in the classroom, as well as the 3 interviewers. The moment the young man and the old man in the classroom saw Lotus Sun, their faces flushed involuntarily. Even the few girls lowered their heads shyly. "My name is Lotus Sunday. From now on, we'll be schoolmates. Please advise me." As always, Lotus Sun was a hit with both men and women. She enjoyed the process very much. She bowed gracefully, twirled her elegant hair, and smiled brightly and confidently. The only thing that displeased her was that Wang Ling still had that dead poker face. How could there be a man in this world that she, Lotus Sun, couldn't win over? She was thinking about how to win over Wang Ling. On the other side, when the 3 interviewers heard Lotus Sun's self-introduction, their hearts were in turmoil. Sun Lotus Sun? One of the male interviewers looked astonished. "Which Lotus Sun? Don't tell me it's that Lotus Sun?" Another person hurriedly flipped through the interview materials for today's candidates and couldn't help cursing. What the hell? The eldest grandson of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, Lotus Sun. This was a Fortune 500 company that specialized in elixirs. On the other side, Wang Ling, who had been silent for a long time, also heard their conversation, and he instantly frowned. Although he had long since expected that Lotus Sun's identity wouldn't be simple, he hadn't expected her family to be so powerful. He had initially planned to keep a low profile, which was why he had chosen a relatively ordinary high school. Who would have thought that before school had even officially started, he would run into big trouble? Wang Ling watched helplessly as Lotus Sun walked over to him with a smile on her face. She directly pulled out a chair for herself next to him and sat down. He was speechless. Why would the eldest daughter of a Fortune 500 company come to this lousy high school to make her presence known? Or did all second-generation rich kids nowadays like to visit incognito? Wang Ling closed his eyes and directly ignored Lotus Sun's flirtatious glances. In any case, as long as he was a little more careful and went easy on her during the assessment, he should be able to smoothly get rid of this troublesome guy, right? Wang Ling didn't want to have a love-struck fool in his class who couldn't stop staring at him. A moment later, the examiner's voice came from the dais. "The interview is about to begin. Students, please get ready." 4 high school students who were all at the foundation establishment stage. The entrance interview wasn't as complicated as one might imagine. It was mainly a test related to strength. According to scientific research, the foundation establishment stage wasn't as difficult to cultivate as one might imagine. As long as they were given enough nutritional supplements and a little talent during their childhood, it wouldn't be difficult to reach the foundation establishment stage. Of course, there were also some aberrant geniuses whose realms didn't need the help of medicine at all, and would advance every 2 years as they grew older. The era Wang Ling was living in now wasn't like the era when the Wang couple had been poor in nutrition. Almost all the children living in big cities had been fed all kinds of cultivation health supplements since they were young. Diamond Partner Brain Gold. These well-known health supplements that strengthened one's foundation, enhance one's intelligence, and strengthen one's muscles and bones were all produced by Huaguo Water Curtain Group. But the biggest problem with relying on supplements to advance to the foundation establishment stage was what people often said: gold and jade on the outside, but rotten inside. Although the threshold for entering the foundation establishment stage had been lowered, the school authorities actually had no idea whether there was any real talent for the foundation establishment stage. This was the real reason why high schools had set up an entrance exam. It was to get a feel for the situation, and also to find the real quality touchstone. By the time Wang Ling's batch of students graduated from Senior 3, how many of them would be able to break away from the foundation establishment stage and become Golden Core experts? Golden Core conversion rate would directly affect the school's reputation. It would also become an important benchmark for the school's application to key colleges and universities next year. On the dais, a middle-aged male examiner with a face as sharp as a knife said slowly, "Over the years, our number 60 high school's Golden Core conversion rate has been 2 in 10,000. That is to say, for every 10,000 students, there might be 2 who become Golden Core experts in the year they graduate, and who will lead their nascent soul dreams to higher universities and institutions of higher learning. I hope that all the students present here will work hard in the next 3 years, improve every day, and strive hard to become qualified successors of the cultivation faith." 2 in 10,000 sounded a little embarrassing at first. After all, number 60 high school only enrolled 300 students every year. But Wang Ling knew that this wasn't too bad a figure. Some of the worst schools didn't even have a Golden Core conversion rate of 2 in a million. Then, we'll begin with the strength test. Students whose names have been reported, please come to the dais and put on your virtual glasses for the first stage of the test. Chapter 3. This year was year 4396 of the cultivation calendar. VR, virtual reality technology, had been further developed and was being used in all major colleges and universities. At the same time, this was also a necessary educational equipment for ordinary foundation establishment high schools. The built-in spirit energy sensor could perfectly transmit data on the user's spirit energy in the virtual environment, and then send it back to the virtual environment. Of course, if it was a key city high school, the equipment would be even more advanced. It was a technique that integrated holographic images with cultivation talismans, and in a split second, it could switch scenes and simulate real environments in pain. But for Wang Ling, none of this mattered, because no matter how good the simulation technology was, in the end, it only simulated the cultivation environment of a foundation establishment cultivator. Wang Ling wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pain, even if he stood there and let the Demon King beat his chest repeatedly with its little fists. Because Wang Ling had already become a sage body long ago. That year, he had been 9 years old. The most important thing for Wang Ling to pay attention to was how to accurately conceal his aura. Otherwise, due to the huge gap in realms, the powerful magnetic field of his spirit energy would directly interfere with the virtual glasses and cause them to crash. In order to take the entrance examination, Wang Ling had been practicing hard at home for the past few days, and had already broken hundreds of virtual glasses. At that moment, Lotus Sun had already put on the virtual glasses, and everyone else could clearly see what she was going to do through the screen on the side. The virtual demon beast that Lotus Sun had to deal with was a giant toad. This toad was based on a certain demon king from the demon rampage 6 years ago, the sky-swallowing toad. And the person who had defeated this demon king back then was the legend who had graduated from number 60 high school, Ajwa. He was probably the most terrifying existence number 60 high school had produced since its founding 1,000 years ago. He had come from a poor background, but he had displayed extremely dazzling talent. At a very young age, Number 60 High School's headmaster had taken a liking to him and taken him in as a disciple, and he had been directly enrolled in Number 60 High School. The year he graduated, he was only 18 years old, but he was already a peerless expert at the late Golden Core stage. After that, he joined the general administration of 100 cultivation schools as deputy director, becoming the youngest manager in the history of the general administration of 100 cultivation schools. But at that time, Audju's reputation had only been limited to a certain area. He had truly made a name for himself during the demon rampage 6 years ago. At that time, Audju had stabbed a sky-swallowing toad, which had stealthily entered the city through the gate between worlds with a sword chi finger from 1,000 li away. After that battle, he became famous, and everyone in the world knew about him. Since then, Number 60 High School had simply included this sky-swallowing toad in the assessment. On one hand, it was to commemorate Audju's meritorious service. On the other hand, it was a call to all students to learn from the legendary Audju. Therefore, this toad's demonic figure could be seen in almost all the exams. As a result, this toad had been jokingly called Devil Toad by former Number 60 High School graduates. After the system upgraded this year, I heard that the difficulty of the sky-swallowing toad has increased quite a bit. That's right. Ever since Audju killed the sky-swallowing toad from a distance back then, he also absorbed its spirit. Unfortunately, the school's facilities were too poor back then, so it was impossible to integrate the primordial spirit into the system. Now, after the innovation of the equipment, the sky-swallowing toad's spirit was input into the system as the core data for a perfect simulation. An examiner looked at the giant green creature on the virtual battlefield and couldn't help frowning deeply. I'm afraid that even Lotus Sun won't be easy to deal with. Although the school had made a lot of distinctions in the sky-swallowing toad's settings, the current system used the sky-swallowing toad's spirit as its core data to simulate a real environment. It would be even more difficult than in previous years. At the moment, this sky-swallowing toad's true realm was still at the middle foundation establishment stage. If the examiner hadn't been able to immediately identify its weak point and deal a critical blow, the results might not have been satisfactory. Almost everyone's eyes were fixed on Lotus Sunday. Only Wang Ling gave a deep yawn as he looked at this scene. To deal enough damage to this sky-swallowing toad, apart from having a foundation at the foundation establishment stage, one also needed real skills. Wang Ling's current perception was far more terrifying than that of scientific equipment. His eyes were like a moving radiation machine. With just one glance, he could see the level of meridian development of everyone present. There were 256 meridians that had to be opened at the foundation establishment stage, and Lotus Sun's meridian development rate had already reached 70%. Even if she was unlucky and couldn't deal a critical blow, her numbers wouldn't be too bad. Under everyone's gazes, Lotus Sun gazed at the giant demon beast in front of her. She took a deep breath, then clenched her fists tightly, and abruptly swooped forward, almost explosively. With a bang, she punched the sky-swallowing toad's abdomen. This was the sky-swallowing toad's weak point, and was almost exactly the same as when Audju had killed it from a distance back then. Whoosh! After the punch landed, there were still some wisps of green smoke on Lotus Sun's fist. This was the best proof of the powerful friction between her fist and the air. It was clear that she had used all her strength in that blow just now. Very quickly, a huge English letter appeared in the air in the virtual environment. S. Classmate Lotus Sun's blow actually got an S grade. Someone in the field cried out in surprise. Watching this scene, the three examiners on the side couldn't stop sweating profusely. It seemed that their previous worries about Lotus Sun had been completely unfounded. She had actually directly gotten an S grade? When all was said and done, she was the future successor of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Even the interview and assessment were as fierce as if she were on drugs. After the system upgrade, according to the big data, the probability of getting an S grade was only 1%. the probability of getting an A grade was 5%, and the probability of getting a B grade was 10%. The rest of the ratings were divided evenly between C, D, and F. As for the higher grades of SS and SSS, the probability was so small that it was almost negligible. The examiners recorded Lotus Sun's data, then glanced at the name list before calling out, "Second, classmate Wang Ling. Please come forward for the test." Bored to death, Wang Ling raised his head. He hadn't expected it to actually be his turn so soon. Directly ignoring Lotus Sun's smile as she stepped off the stage, Wang Ling carefully put on the virtual glasses. He raised the limit on his spirit energy to the maximum, in case the machine exploded the moment he put on the glasses. Fortunately, with the experience he had accumulated from breaking hundreds of machines yesterday, Wang Ling managed to pass this test without any mishaps. However, that wasn't the real trouble at the moment. Wang Ling stared at the huge blue toad in front of him. To be honest, this surprised him a little, because 6 years ago, in the history of the Demon Rampage, the legendary Audiobook had killed this sky-swallowing toad from a distance. Actually, Wang Ling had killed it in passing by the snack shop back then. Chapter 4. The Demon Rampage 6 years ago was probably one of the few major disasters that Huaxiao Nation had faced since its founding. Because they hadn't been able to control the wasted spirit energy, it had polluted the entire space and broken through the space wall, allowing the gate between worlds to enter the world of demons. The Demon Rampage that year had been very aggressive, and Huaxiao Nation's economy had evaporated by tens of billions of yuan overnight. But what people hadn't expected was that the Demon Rampage had come and gone as quickly as it had happened. In just a few short days, several heroic cultivators had been conferred the title of Huaxiao Nation's annual honor roll of honor. Audiobook, who had killed the 5th-level sky-swallowing toad from a distance, was one of them. In addition, Wang Ling remembered that there were 9 other people who had been conferred this title, but he couldn't even remember their names. Wang Ling remembered that it should have been a sunny and cloudless day. He had been walking alone on the streets of Star City, the capital of Huaxiao Nation. His home was a small villa in an urban rural area about 30,000 li away from Star City, barely on the edge of the city. Despite the distance, it had only taken Wang Ling 5 minutes to run to Star City at full speed. As for why he had come all the way to Star City, it had just been to buy a limited edition crispy noodle snack. Wang Ling remembered that it had been the day that Little Raccoon crispy noodle snacks had been released, and had only been sold within Star City. If you could draw a limited edition raccoon flash card, you would be able to eat a 200-year-old crispy noodle snack for free. For Wang Ling, this was undoubtedly a huge temptation. In Wang Ling's memory, crispy noodle snacks had always had a very high status. For a time, they had been more valuable than immortal tools on the market. Because no matter how expensive they were, or how rare they were made of, Wang Ling would always crush them in just a few minutes. But crispy noodle snacks were different. Even if you crushed them, you could still eat them to your heart's content and satisfy your appetite. Ever since he was a child, Wang Ling had felt that the guy who had invented the crispy noodle snack should be given an award. Just as Wang Ling hurriedly arrived at the old Little Raccoon crispy noodle snacks flagship store, which had been open for more than 800 years, there was suddenly a loud boom in the sky, and the gate between worlds broke through the air and opened without warning. He felt that he would never be able to forget this moment for the rest of his life. Powerful vibrations accompanied by gravitational waves invisible to the naked eye directly broke through the sky above the shop, instantly flattening the huge shop in front of them. He completely couldn't remember what he had been feeling at that time. He only remembered that he was very angry at that time, and was anxious to find an outlet to vent his anger. In the next moment, a giant creature descended from the sky. A massive and thick green body descended in front of Wang Ling with an unparalleled sharpness. Its terrifying eyes, which were as big as compasses, flickered with a strange luster. It was a gigantic green toad. It was probably the biggest demon beast he had ever seen since he was born. The instant the 300-foot-tall body landed on the ground, dust and dirt flew up within a 50-kilometer radius. Unfortunately, this sky-swallowing toad wasn't lucky enough to run into Wang Ling. Who the hell knew what it had experienced? Before the sky-swallowing toad could even make a full cry, Wang Ling's fist had already punched through its stomach. It wasn't until it fell to the ground, and its primordial spirit was knocked out of its sheath, that the sky-swallowing toad saw the person who had killed it with one blow. A child who was only 10 years old? At that moment, it felt like 10,000 alpacas were galloping through the sky-swallowing toad's heart. F***K. What on earth was going on with this planet? The sky-swallowing toad had used the last bit of its spirit energy to warn the demon beasts on the other side of the gate between worlds not to approach this place again. Thus, Wang Ling had a lot to do with how the demon rampage from 6 years ago had been able to disperse so quickly. As for how Jua had been linked to the subsequent rewards based on merit and the credit for killing the sky-swallowing toad, Wang Ling had no idea. He only remembered that he had been sad for a long time over the sudden disappearance of the century-old crispy noodle snacks flagship store. This time, when Wang Ling stood in front of this miniature sky-swallowing toad, which had already been reclassified by the system, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He had predicted that number 60 high school would definitely make a big deal out of Jua's glorious feat of killing the sky-swallowing toad. But he had never expected that number 60 high school would actually be able to obtain the sky-swallowing toad's primordial spirit, and even input it into the system's database to make the simulation seem more realistic. This was the aura that had truly killed it in one blow. Even in its current state, the sky-swallowing toad would never ever forget it. Even though it had already been 6 years, when Wang Ling stood in front of it again, the sky-swallowing toad still recognized him at one glance. Furthermore, the moment it saw Wang Ling, the toad was instantly petrified. No demon wanted to be hit twice in a row by this kind of monster. Who knew if this guy's punch would scatter what was left of its primordial spirit? Facing the sky-swallowing toad again, Wang Ling honestly had no idea how to deal with it. Just as Wang Ling was hesitating, the sky-swallowing toad in front of him beat him to it and fell to the ground with a bang. And then there was no then. Wang Ling. The sky-swallowing toad lay on its back and rolled its eyes. Then the system quickly gave an evaluation. SSS. Everyone cried out in alarm. What the hell? What's going on? Classmate Wang hasn't even punched yet? Could it be a system error? One of the proctor's jaws dropped. That shouldn't be possible. All the equipment was tested yesterday. There definitely isn't any problem. I see. Another examiner cried out in alarm. Could it be, this is the legendary killing with a gaze? Wang Ling. The sky-swallowing toad. That's the only possibility. Another examiner said solemnly. Legend has it that there are some unique talents who indeed possess such a special trait. Using their gaze, they can use their aura to make demon beasts faint. This is what the Cultivation Encyclopedia mentions. Papa. Haushikahaki. At that moment, the 3 examiners sucked in sharp breaths, and were actually so excited that tears streamed down their faces. Yes, that had to be it. This was the only way to explain why Wang Ling had been able to stun this toad with a single glare. While Wang Ling was still feeling bewildered, an examiner stepped forward and gripped his hand tightly. Classmate Wang Ling, you are the future star of our number 60 high school. According to the rules, classmate Wang will directly enter our number 60 high school's elite class. Let us all applaud classmate Wang Ling, and look forward to classmate Wang Ling accomplishing even greater feats at our number 60 high school. As the sun set in the west, the red sunset cast a long shadow as Wang Ling walked home alone. He glanced at the admission certificate for the elite class, which had been personally issued by the head of teaching at number 60 high school. Chapter 5. Ever since he was a child, he had always kept a low profile and never revealed himself. Of course, there were exceptions. For example, this year's entrance examination. Before the official exam, he had also studied how to control his own magnetic field, in case the machine used for the exam was affected by the magnetic field and exploded. But even though he had racked his brains to keep a low profile, in the end, he had still entered the elite class. But where did this come from? At dinner time, Wang Ling carelessly took a mouthful of rice and couldn't help looking up at the sky and sighing. Why was it so difficult to be a bad student these days? In any case, he completely didn't expect Father and Mother Wang to understand his distress. This clown couple stared at the certificate of the elite class personally signed by the head of teaching. Their eyes were as big as gongs as they looked up and down, afraid that they would miss a single word. A moment later, this middle-aged man with slick-back hair and a small mustache took off his black-rimmed glasses and rested his chin in his hands as he looked at Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, I think we need to talk. Although he was very reluctant to admit that this man, who had yet to reach the foundation establishment stage, was his father, he very obediently put down his bowl and chopsticks. Wang Ling didn't need to think to already guess what Wang Dahai was going to say. The first sentence would definitely be, I'm very disappointed in you. As expected, Wang Ling had guessed correctly. I'm very disappointed in you. Comrade Wang Dahai sighed deeply, pinched his mustache and said, Can't you do a little worse? You do so well every time. Your mother and I are very embarrassed. Speechless, Wang Ling rolled his eyes at Wang Dahai. He hadn't done so well on purpose. Just like today's situation, it was completely an unavoidable factor. You should know that your mother and I haven't reached the foundation establishment stage yet. But what about your performance? There's so much crazy talk in the outside world now. Speaking up to this point, Father Wang covered his face and actually sounded like he was about to cry as he said, Not only are people saying that we picked you up, there are also people who are calling me a cuckold. Wang Ling, let me tell you next time, just take a random test. Otherwise, you might as well just hand in a blank paper. Don't listen to your mother's advice about the golden mean. That's complete nonsense. Wang Ling was speechless. It seemed like he was blindly taking the test every time, okay? Father Wang sighed and said, If you do so well again, I'll spank you. Hearing this, Wang Ling's face darkened, and he directly broke his chopsticks. Father Wang shivered when he saw this. F***K. Another pair of the ninth heaven black iron chopsticks I bought 2 days ago broke. Forget it, Ling Ling can't control himself. Why are you talking about this while eating? Compared with Father Wang, Mother Wang's attitude toward this matter was always one of letting nature take its course, which left Wang Ling feeling rather awkward every time. Compared to that, it's more important for Ling Ling to learn how to control his strength and eat properly. Look, another pair is broken. The quality of the manufacturers nowadays is really getting worse and worse. Mother Wang sighed in distress. This time, the family's expenses were going to increase. From a young age, Wang Ling's hand strength had never been ordinary. Ever since Wang Ling had broken the big magic sword when he was 1 year old, Father and Mother Wang had given almost all the furniture in the house a complete makeover. If the furniture wasn't made of black jade, black iron, or even black diamond, they were afraid that Wang Ling would break them if he wasn't careful. Looking at the broken pair of black iron chopsticks, Father and Mother Wang couldn't help having mixed feelings. In order to teach Wang Ling how to use chopsticks, they had already broken more than 10,000 pairs. All in all, it could be summed up in one word: pain in the ass. But the word pain in the ass had practically been with Wang Ling since he was a child. In his own words, he had gotten used to it as it hurt. What did he get after attaining the high realm that everyone dreamed of? First earning 100 million by performing on the street? Admittedly, Wang Ling could crush mountains with his chest, but there weren't that many mountains in the world for him to smash. Nowadays, every corner of the world was a national protected resource. Smashing mountains on the street would result in prison, at least 3 years in prison, and the highest being the death penalty. Power to dominate everything? The ambition to rule the planet? Admittedly, Wang Ling had the strength to do so, but in comparison, he would rather stay at home and read comics. Boundless magic power, and the divine ability to reverse time and space? Admittedly, Wang Ling could use his power to open up a space-time tunnel, but if he was caught by the space-time administrator, given his family's tiny foundation, he would probably be punished to the point of bankruptcy in an instant. In summary, attaining an absolutely high realm wasn't as easy as one might imagine. So what if he was a cultivation king? He still had to meticulously plan for trivial matters every day, just to keep a low profile in front of others. He didn't want to cause trouble for his Muggle parents. Looking at the table full of dishes, Wang Ling shoved the last mouthful of rice into his mouth, and couldn't help but sigh deeply in his heart. How tired. Given his current realm, as long as he absorbed a small amount of spirit energy from heaven and earth every day, he wouldn't be affected even if he didn't drink or eat. For Wang Ling now, eating was purely a formality. It was late at night. Back in his bedroom, Wang Ling's favorite thing to do was to lie on his little bed and quietly look at the starry sky through the skylight in the ceiling. It was only at this time that Wang Ling's ears felt a little more peaceful. Although he was still affected by the mind-reading ability, he would always hear some low murmur. But compared with the environment during the day, Wang Ling felt that it was already quite peaceful. There were many times when he wondered if he belonged to this world. However, the ironclad DNA test had dispelled all these doubts and thoughts from a very young age. The Muggle couple outside, who were always showing off their love, were his real parents. The most frightening thing in the world wasn't that you were improving and growing every day, but that the rate at which you improved seemed to never change. When he was young, Wang Ling had always tried to find the limits of his realm, but it wasn't until he grew up that he realized that he had no limits at all. His realm grew every 2 years, and he couldn't see where his limit was at all. For a time, Wang Ling had been very frightened, but what terrified him even more now was his upcoming high school life. Who knew what he would experience? He had wanted to enter the school with a low profile, but by a freak combination of factors, he had entered the elite class. And then there was Lotus Sun, who was definitely going to be a troublesome person. Initially, Wang Ling hadn't planned on having too much to do with her, but now trouble was right in front of him. Wang Ling sat up straight in bed and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Then, he stretched out his hand and directly took out a bag of snacks from a drawer. No matter what happened tomorrow. Chapter 6. Today was the first day of school at number 60 high school. Oh no, to be exact, it was the first day of school for all foundation establishment high schools across the country. Huaxiao Nation had always advocated the principle that nothing could be accomplished without rules. Thousands of years of cultural accumulation weren't just for show. Start school at a fixed time, attend morning classes, have a fixed lunch break, and leave school at a fixed time. Students had to wear school uniforms. These school rules, which had been written down in the history books for hundreds of years, were still intact. While Wang Ling had been eating crispy noodle snacks last night, the school uniform had already been delivered to his house via space delivery. The blue and white sports-style uniform was specially printed on the back of the uniform with the word elite for the elite class. Although he had already been mentally prepared, Wang Ling still couldn't help sucking in a cold breath at the style of the uniform. He understood this principle. It was normal to promote national culture after thousands of years of cultural accumulation. But couldn't they ***king improve their aesthetic standards a little? And what the hell was that elite character on the back of the uniform? The privilege of the elite class? No matter how he looked at it, Wang Ling felt that the inspiration for this uniform had definitely been copied from the clothes and accessories of ancient prisoners on death row 3,000 years ago, who usually had the word death printed on the front and back of their clothes. It wasn't that there weren't any improvements. Almost all the pockets on the uniform were storage spaces, and the capacity was so large that it was almost inexhaustible. In a true sense, it was achieving the policy of reducing student burdens that Huaxiao's General Administration of Education had promulgated for thousands of years. But obviously this wasn't the main point. For Wang Ling, the most important thing was how he was going to deal with this incomparably ******** day. Setting out from the Wang family's small villa in the urban rural fringe, number 60 high school was still a full 10,000 li away. Wang Ling practically turned into a gust of wind as he ran through the countryside streets. In less than 2 minutes, he had reached the school gate. After all, he had traveled 30,000 li to buy crispy noodle snacks as a child. So this 10,000 li journey was really too easy for Wang Ling. His face wasn't red and he wasn't out of breath. Today was the first day of school, and Director Shi and several school leaders had personally come to the gate to welcome the new students. Coincidentally, just as Wang Ling turned the corner, he heard them talking from a distance. "I heard that a new student got an SSS rating yesterday." "Yes, Headmaster Chen. His name is Wang Ling, and he's currently been assigned to the elite class." So that's how it is. It seems like this student will have great achievements in the future. By the way, is this student Wang Ling a boy or a girl? Headmaster Chen asked. "It's a male student." Headmaster Chen had a look of pity on his face. "Sigh, male students nowadays are very perceptive. If this classmate Wang Ling was a female student, I wouldn't mind calling her to my office and personally instructing her." The group of campus leaders, led by Dean Shi, all had a look of pity on their faces. Wang Ling. Straightening his school uniform, Wang Ling walked through the school gate with a calm expression on his face. He bowed and saluted, and no one recognized him. The reason was very simple. On his mad dash to number 60 high school, he had already used the Great Transfiguration spell, one of the 3,000 magical abilities. The biggest difference between this and an ordinary disguise technique was that this magical power was so powerful that it could completely change one's appearance, fingerprints, and even DNA structure. No matter how advanced science and technology were, it was impossible to detect. In contrast, the Great Transfiguration spell, which was an ancient technique based on makeup, could be immediately detected by any electronic eye on the street and swiftly issued an alarm. In this way, Wang Ling successfully evaded the gazes of the leaders at the school gate and successfully enrolled. Although the process had been a little difficult, Wang Ling felt that it had all been worth it. For Wang Ling, all the cheers and applause were superfluous. From a young age, what Wang Ling had hoped for the most was a quiet environment where he could study in peace. Unfortunately, these wishes had never been King realized. Some people said that when God closed a door, he would surely open a window. But Wang Ling's situation was clearly even more bitter. Not only had God opened the door and window for him, he had also stirred up a violent sandstorm outside. Grade 1. Class 3 was located on the first floor of number 60 high school's teaching building. Geographically speaking, the front door of the classroom led to the women's restroom, and the back door led to the men's restroom. It was also the class closest to the school canteen. Every time the school released lunch, a group of elites could be seen raising their utensils high and quickly arriving at the battlefield. This was definitely an incomparably magnificent scene. Schools nowadays were no longer the same as before, where there were fewer courses, but a lot of class hours. Furthermore, they were strictly in line with the trends of the cultivation era. Not to mention physical and strength training, drawing talismans, making spirit water, controlling fire to refine pills, and so on. Basic courses like these alone took up his entire first year of high school. The first year of high school was an important period of building one's foundation. Although Wang Ling had learned these things without a teacher in his mother's womb. However, he still had to pretend that he didn't know anything and obediently attend every class. Then he would do his best to get an average score. Every time Wang Ling thought of these trivial matters, he felt a twinge of pain in the ass. Making friends had always been Wang Ling's weakness. Number 60 high school was divided into 2 elite classes, and there were 15 students in his class. After a morning of picking out the class leaders, Wang Ling could only remember a handful of names. The first to bear the brunt was Lotus Sun, who had been elected class monitor with a unanimous vote. She was the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group, at the late foundation establishment stage, and boasted of being a modern standard beauty. She did her best to create the impression that she was beautiful and graceful. She seemed perfect, but there were enough psychological dramas to weave a large-scale drama about family ethics that no one in Huaxiao Nation had been able to write for 5,000 years. Second was Super Chun, the sports committee member. He was at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was one of the young powerhouses most likely to advance to the golden core stage. Born in an ancient martial arts family, he was also a muscular brother, who was passionate about bodybuilding. He was probably the most energetic person in the whole school, and would always inexplicably become hot-blooded, leaving people with a stirring and tragic feeling. Third was Hirogwa, the political science representative. At the late foundation establishment stage, his ancestors ran a pet shop, and in Hirogwa's great-grandfather's generation, they started a spirit beast business. He would often bring a parrot called Dopey with him to sing a two-man show. Sometimes he would criticize the evils of the times, and sometimes he would worry about the country and the people. He was known as the gossipy little genius of every class. People gave him the nickname, Master of Dopey. Fourth was also the person Wang Ling was most wary of, Li Xianjing. It sounded like a girl's name, but he was a rough man who was 190 centimeters tall. Like his name, he was a man of few words, and was perhaps a fairly unremarkable presence in class. But the most important thing was that Wang Ling realized that his mind-reading ability couldn't work on this person at all. He was completely unable to read this person's thoughts. This was a very rare situation, and there were only two circumstances that could prevent Wang Ling from reading minds. The first was that he had a powerful magic weapon on him that blocked his spirit energy signal. The second was that he was simple enough and didn't have the slightest bit of scheming. In any case, in Wang Ling's eyes, Li Xianjing was a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time, and was very bad for hiding his identity. In short, Wang Ling decided to be more vigilant against these four people. At the end of class, the sound of laughter could be heard in class. Looking around at the noisy environment, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. It really wasn't King easy to hide his identity in this fiery environment. Looking at the time, Wang Ling took out a book called One Talisman and one seal script from the space bag in his school uniform and put it on the table. At that moment, the bell for class rang. Less than a 10,000th of a second after the bell rang, a middle-aged woman with a ponytail and gold-rimmed glasses stormed through the door. She walked up to the dais and slammed down the blue register in her hands. "I was still in the office when I heard your voices all over the corridor. You're the school's elites. What's with all this noise?" Chapter 7. Wang Ling had long heard of teacher Pan Xingsong's glorious deeds. The top teacher of number 60 high school, who had been rehired after retirement, had once trained a number of students with full potential to reach the golden core stage. Unfortunately, these students were clearly just a hair's breadth away from the golden core stage, but hadn't been able to advance to the golden core stage until the year they graduated. But this definitely wasn't Teacher Pan's fault. It was said that the master led the way, but cultivation depended on the individual. If one didn't work hard at cultivation, the boss would only be sad. Although there had been countless failures, Teacher Pan Xingsong had grabbed the last straw to clutch it when she retired. Number 60 High School's legendary Audiobook. That was right. The legendary Audiobook, who had become famous after graduating from number 60 high school by killing the sky-swallowing toad. He had also been Teacher Pan's student. Based on this, Teacher Pan had successfully won the school leader's full trust, and thus became the top teacher in the history of number 60 high school despite having the lowest realm among all the retired teachers who had been rehired after retirement. Wang Ling didn't care what kind of dark social roots there were in this. He just hoped that this Teacher Pan was a little more astute and wouldn't make trouble for him for no reason. After all, he was working hard to become invisible. Like all teachers in charge, Teacher Pan had a pair of eyes that were good at spotting and a pair of ears that were good at listening. For example, when Teacher Pan was still in the office, she could hear the sound of her classmates frolicking in the distance. Another example was when Teacher Pan passed by the corridor and saw that the students in the next class were studying very seriously, while her own class was a mess. Hence, Teacher Pan was very angry. As soon as she entered the room, she slammed the register on the lectern with a bang to show her dissatisfaction. "This is my 80th year of teaching at number 60 high school. I've taught 10 elite classes, and you are the 10th. You are the worst class I've ever taught." Everyone in the room was blank at these words, and somehow felt that they had heard them somewhere before. But as the most difficult female teacher in number 60 high school's history, no one dared to provoke her on the first day of school. Of course, Lotus Sun did, but Teacher Pan wasn't a fool, and naturally wouldn't provoke her for no reason. She didn't know any of the other students. Thus, in this situation, Teacher Pan quickly found a person to make an example of her and demonstrate her might as a teacher's in charge. Which one is classmate Wang Ling? Wang Ling was startled, and then the whole class turned to look at him in unison. Teacher Pan. It's you, I heard your voice in the corridor just now. Wang Ling. It doesn't matter how you came here, whether it was luck or strength. Since you're here in my class, I hope that all the elites will learn a lesson. Don't be late, don't leave early, don't be loud. If you insist on going against me, then I can only ask your parents. This was the normal procedure before class. As someone who didn't speak much in class, Wang Ling had almost always had the experience of being unjustly attacked since he was young. Wang Ling remembered that the most serious time was when he was in the Qi condensation preparatory class. He had directly mobilized a meteorite to blow up the school sports field, and the school had been suspended for 3 whole days. Fortunately, he had already learned to control his emotions. Otherwise, if he really went crazy, even he himself would be afraid. Teacher Pan's main course was Dao Talismans. In addition to teaching the basics of making talismans, she also taught advanced content for the elite class. Cinnabar, yellow talismans, spirit water, and a writing brush. These were the 4 basic materials for making talismans. For the elite class, the basic course content was very small, and the pace of almost all the courses was very fast. It was only the first class, but Teacher Pan had already brought the 4 basic materials and started the course. I don't know if you've ever drawn talismans before, but in my class, you have to start from scratch. Now, I'll teach you how to draw the spirit guiding talisman. As the name implied, the spirit guiding talisman was a type of talisman used to summon spirits. It was a summoning talisman, compared with the other offensive and defensive talismans, functional talismans and sealing talismans. Although the spirit guiding talisman sounded scary, it was the easiest of all the basic talismans to make. Even for newcomers, the success rate was quite high. As she said this, Teacher Pan mixed the cinnabar and spirit water together, opened the yellow talisman, and picked up the writing brush. Now I'll teach you how to draw the spirit guiding talisman. Everyone stared at Teacher Pan as she skillfully picked up the writing brush and scribbled on the yellow talisman in what looked like a few random strokes before a standard talisman was completed. All that was left was to gather spirit energy and then throw the spirit guiding talisman into the air. Now, it was time to witness a miracle. The spirit guiding talisman, which had been floating in the air at first, suddenly froze in the next instant, and then burst forth with a faint light. Everyone could see a transparent silhouette floating in the air. This was the so-called specter. Teacher Pan pointed at this greenish-gray mass and said, "I've controlled the output of spirit energy. What you see now is just the weakest of ghosts, the floating spirit, which isn't very lethal. Beginners often summon a high-level evil spirit because they can't control their spirit energy. But don't worry, if anything unexpected happens, I'll personally take action. But since the floating spirit has already been summoned, I'll briefly explain how to get rid of it." As she spoke, Teacher Pan touched the cinnabar on the table, which had been mixed with water. She only touched it a little with her index finger, then swiftly pointed forward and hit the spot between the floating spirit's eyebrows. The floating spirit let out a blood-curdling screech as it was instantly torn in half, and then turned into a wisp of smoke that disappeared. The spot between the eyebrows is the common weakness of ghosts. Combined with the cinnabar mixed with spirit water and a little spirit energy, cultivators can easily get rid of the spirit. As for those in the market who throw salt, pour urine, or sprinkle chicken blood, none of them can be trusted. Teacher Pan waved her hand, and light flowed in all directions as she distributed the raw materials for the 4 types of talismans on everyone's desks. Now students can follow the steps I just demonstrated. And then there was no then. The classroom was in an uproar. All sorts of specters were summoned. The floating spirit that Lotus Sun summoned was a female student who had once fallen off the rooftop of number 60 high school. Strictly speaking, this female ghost was their senior sister. On the other hand, Super Chen summoned an ancient executioner with 9 knives stuck in its head. The cause of death was that the family of a condemned prisoner had been hacked to death when they raided the execution ground. Master of Dopey Hirogwa summoned a dog, but it didn't have the slightest bit of flesh on it, only bones. When the dog lovers in the class saw this, they all strongly condemned it. There was a saying that the purer a person's heart was, the easier it was for them to provoke foul things. And the thing that Li Xianjing summoned just happened to confirm this point. It was a ghost that had already completely evolved from a floating spirit into a malicious ghost. It had green eyes and red pupils, and one of its eyeballs was hanging from the outside, and it had a very strong resentment. But as a pioneer teacher who had been on the front lines of number 60 high school for many years, Teacher Pan was in the inn. Teacher Pan, almost as soon as the malicious spirit appeared, he rushed forward and pulled off the malicious spirit's eyeball, crushing it in front of everyone. Everyone exclaimed in their hearts, "So F*** King Valiant." Almost all the students in the class successfully used the materials they had on hand to summon ghosts once. Only Wang Ling hadn't made a move yet. He had learned these things without a teacher since he was in his mother's womb. And it actually wasn't difficult at all. Wang Ling probably knew more talismans than all the teachers in the school put together. But the most difficult thing was that he couldn't accurately control the output of spirit energy. Staring at the 4 types of raw materials on the table, he fell into deep thought. Chapter 8. Growing up, everyone had probably heard the same legend. The school they studied in was actually a graveyard. Wang Ling had no way of verifying the veracity of this legend. But the fact was that the soil he was standing on had indeed been a graveyard. Graveyard land had always been cheap, and it wasn't until 600 years ago that it had been purchased by a government education agency and turned into number 60 high school. Thinking about it now, it was indeed a little creepy. After all, number 60 high school's sports field had originally been part of a graveyard. Now, the students who energetically danced the 250th set of radio calisthenics on the sports field every morning were no different from disco dancing on graves. It was precisely because of this that he could see all kinds of strange things in Dao Talisman's class. In short, Wang Ling's worry wasn't without reason. He couldn't accurately control the output of spirit energy. In addition, number 60 high school had originally been a graveyard. Now that these 2 deadly factors had come together, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't create some strange specter that even Teacher Pan wouldn't be able to deal with. Seeing that Wang Ling still hadn't made a move, Teacher Pan slowly walked over with her hands clasped behind her back. In her opinion, it wasn't luck that Wang Ling had been able to enter the elite class, but that there had been a bug in the system back then. In fact, he was a complete slacker. "Student, why aren't you drawing a talisman? Or did you not understand something just now? I can teach you step by step." Didn't understand? That was simply an insult to his intelligence. Wang Ling silently rolled his eyes at Teacher Pan in his heart. This was going to kill him. Got it. But given the current situation, it wasn't up to Wang Ling to decide. Keeping a low profile was certainly very important. But Wang Ling didn't want to become a good-for-nothing who had relied on luck to sneak into the elite class and become the target of everyone's condemnation. Staring deeply at the yellow talisman in front of him, Wang Ling exhaled and picked up the writing brush. Now he could only do his best to control the output of spirit energy. The moment the talisman was completed, Wang Ling already held his breath. The group of friends around them all had the mentality of watching a good show and didn't mind the matter getting bigger. Like everyone else, the yellow talisman floated in the air for a moment, and then it was accompanied by a dazzling light. Then, a rather large cyan figure appeared in front of everyone. The next moment, Teacher Pan was petrified. The students around her were petrified. Even Wang Ling himself was petrified. The sky-swallowing toad hadn't expected that it would meet the shadow of its childhood for the 3rd time in this way. Given Wang Ling's strength, if he didn't control his spirit energy well, the specter he summoned would most likely be at the level of a ghost king. And in number 60 high school, the biggest ghost was in fact himself. After the sky-swallowing toad's primordial spirit had been sealed, it had racked its brains to split off a wisp of its soul to escape the seal. It had never expected that Wang Ling would summon it here again. At this moment, the toad's heart was about to collapse. As it looked at Wang Ling, it broke out in a cold sweat. Croak croak. The toad wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It had already sensed Wang Ling's murderous intent. If it made the slightest suspicious move, it had no doubt that Wang Ling would kill it without hesitation. Thus, in order to preserve the last shred of its soul, this sky-swallowing toad swallowed the humiliation it had never experienced before. It used the simple croak of the great Tao to prove that it didn't have any lethality. Who would have thought? As a 5th-level demon king, it would now be so embarrassed that it had to pretend to be mentally retarded to prove that it was pure and harmless. Wang Ling hadn't expected that he would meet the shadow of his childhood for the 3rd time in this way. The main culprit who had ruined his 200-year-old crispy noodle snack plan back then had appeared in front of him once again. Furthermore, in order to preserve its own life, it had actually pretended to be a pet in public for people to tease. Where was the moral integrity of a grand demon king? But looking at its pitiful appearance, Wang Ling really didn't have the heart to do anything to it. Although this was just a 5th-level demon that had been beaten to the point where only its soul was left, in many people's eyes, it was still a very ferocious monster. But this sky-swallowing toad was very smart, and with just a croak, it instantly cleared its name. Student Wang Ling and this sky-swallowing toad are really fated. Teacher Pan was stupefied for 30 seconds after the sky-swallowing toad appeared. She was well aware that given her strength, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to deal with this kind of monster. But this frog's croak gave her a reassuring reassurance. It turned out that this was just an evil creature that was so weak that it couldn't even speak. Then what the hell did she have to be afraid of? Students, don't worry. This monster no longer has the strength to resist. I'll seal it now. As she spoke, Teacher Pan swiftly used Immortal Guides the way to grab the sky-swallowing toad's soul with one hand and the dog-bone specter on the ground with the other, as if she was going to fuse their souls together. Wang Ling couldn't be any clearer about the chemical reaction between a demon king and a low-level creature. The demon king's enormous spirit energy would help this puppy reconstruct its body, and after that, the demon king would also be able to obtain a physical body. This was the best of both worlds. On one hand, it could restrict the sky-swallowing toad's soul, and on the other hand, it could be considered giving this pitiful puppy some compensation for being eaten. Of course, the sky-swallowing toad was aware of what it meant for its souls to fuse with this skeletal dog. It meant that its spirit energy would be greatly weakened, and at the same time, it would completely turn into a dog in the future. I'll turn a blind eye to what should be performed, and force a toad that loves you the most to improvise. In that instant, Wang Ling could almost hear the sky-swallowing toad's desperate thoughts. Teacher Pan was indeed Teacher Pan. As a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, who struggled on the front lines all year round, her technique was as smooth as flowing water, and there was almost no pause. Students, I've already subdued this monster. I didn't expect that even though its primordial spirit was sealed, it was still able to separate a remnant soul. But it's fine now. It's limited by its physical body, and the spirit energy it can exert is very little. Teacher Pan said proudly, "From now on, everyone will treat it as our class mascot." After a burst of light, sure enough, everyone saw a green-furred puppy appear in front of them in a brand new form. Ah, it's an Akita. Lotus Sun's maiden heart instantly overflowed. But this dog's color is so strange. Why is it green? It's because it fused with the sky-swallowing toad. Master of Dopey pushed up his glasses and sighed. This is an era where looks are everything. If you're good-looking, who cares what color your hair is dyed? Superchin proudly picked up the Akita and pinched its fat face in passing. How about we give this dog a name? Let's call it Loopy Toad. Wang Ling. Loopy Toad. Hey, why isn't it barking? You should bark. You know, now you're a dog, not a toad. Loopy Toad. It silently glanced at Wang Ling's indifferent face not far away. Chapter 9. The most tragic way in the world to be reborn was to be born in the wrong body. Following the example of Marshal Zhu Wuning, Comrade Loopy Toad followed in his footsteps. It was clearly a demon king with spiritual intelligence. It had managed to separate a remnant soul with great difficulty. But in the end, it had been inexplicably summoned to the classroom, and then inexplicably forcibly merged with it, turning from a toad into a dog. This could simply be called an epic miracle of rebirth. It was just short of being recorded in history. Since Loopy Toad's arrival, the atmosphere in the class had clearly become a lot more cheerful. Rubbing Loopy Toad's little fat face after class had already become a habit of the students. The most important thing was that Wang Ling realized that Loopy Toad's arrival had suddenly made him feel a lot less important. He was very satisfied with this. Thus, he tacitly approved of Loopy Toad's existence. In the last few days, Master of Dopey Hirogua, who was born into a family of soul pets, had taken up the role of a soul pet trainer, specializing in training Loopy Toad to bark. As the saying went when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Vigorously training a toad that had turned into a dog to bark was amazing no matter how one thought about it. It was only then that Loopy Toad realized that it had completely fallen into a pirate ship. This group of future flowers of the motherland had actually forced a toad to bark like a dog. This was 2F*** king tragic. Then, everyone saw Master of Dopey's vigorous dog training process. The well-intentioned Master of Dopey used almost all his spare time to collect all kinds of videos of dogs barking for Loopy Toad to see. But Loopy Toad had a disinterested expression as it lay lazily on the ground, completely lacking the drive of a reborn dog to strive to reach the pinnacle of its dog life. Later, Master of Dopey realized that perhaps his teaching method was wrong. After all, Loopy Toad had been an awe-inspiring fifth-class demon king in its previous life. If you put yourself in Loopy Toad's shoes, it would be an extremely shameful thing to make a former demon king bark like a dog. Thus, Master of Dopey hit upon the nail in the coffin and thought of a brand new method. Thus, the next day, everyone saw Master of Dopey bring a roll of posters to class and nail it to the back door. Everyone was amazed. "What are you doing with the investiture of the gods poster?" Smiling smugly, Master of Dopey led Loopy Toad to the poster and pointed to a corner. "Do you see that? Howling celestial dog, god of dogs. It shouldn't be lower than your status as a demon king. This will be your goal in the future." Loopy Toad. Everyone. In the end, it wasn't Master of Dopey who had succeeded in making Loopy Toad abandon its dignity as a demon king and learn to bark. It was Master of Dopey's parrot, Dopey, and a girl in class called Feather Lin. Feather Lin was the sixth person on Wang Ling's list of people to be on guard against. And it was only after a whole week that she had successfully gained Wang Ling's attention. For a time, Wang Ling had thought that she was even scarier than Teacher Pan, because she was a veteran Fujoshi. As long as it was a male, Xiaoyu could accurately differentiate between the offensive and the defensive. The most obvious thing about this was that while Master of Dopey had been teaching Loopy Toad, Feather Lin had successfully paired Dopey the parrot and Loopy Toad, two creatures of different species and different structures, and had also differentiated between the offensive and the defensive. The most unexpected thing was that Loopy Toad, which seemed to have a very strong attack attribute, was actually classified as the receiving party by Little Fish, of course. Loopy Toad strongly condemned this and raised a solemn protest. As soon as class was over, Feather Lin would start to relentlessly play matchmaker as she spouted her fallacious reasoning. Look, from ancient times until now, chicken crows and dog steals, chicken bits and dog pieces, stealing chickens and touching dogs, clay chickens and pottery dogs. Since ancient times, chickens and dogs have been recognized as a CP. Loopy Toad. Chicking your sister. This was clearly just a F*** king parrot. Spouting nonsense with a straight face actually angered Loopy Toad so much that it barked woof. After all, it was still a dog in the end. Even if its soul kept restricting Loopy Toad from barking, the memory of its body wouldn't change. Seeing that Loopy Toad had finally barked because of her provocation, Feather Lin sneered slightly. So it's under a receiving. Loopy Toad. It had already been a week since Wang Ling started school. His high school life had deviated from what he had expected due to various freak accidents. He had entered a class he shouldn't have been in, and met a bunch of amusing people he shouldn't have known. Overall, however, it could still be considered peaceful. At the very least, the strong brainwashing from the new CP, Loopy Toad and Dopey, had greatly diminished the sense of existence he had gained during the entrance examination. But good times didn't last long, and trouble very quickly found him. After school on Friday afternoon, Wang Ling smelled something unusual in the air. He realized that someone was following him. Then from the corner of his eyes, he immediately noticed a direction. That was where the malicious gaze was coming from. This group of people were very clever. They had used all kinds of high-end anti-tracking equipment, and even various talismans to set up arrays to conceal their auras. Unfortunately, even though they had enough tricks up their sleeves, they still couldn't escape Wang Ling's perception. His eyes were tens of thousands of times more powerful than the world's most powerful laser scanners. His ears were like a listening device in the Earth's core. Coupled with his mind-reading ability, he could instantly lock onto any person on Earth if he wanted to. After all, when it came to realms, everything else was just nothingness. Young master, the target has left the school gate. A man in a suit and black sunglasses walked over to a limited edition black sports car in Huaxiao Nation and bowed respectfully to the half-open window. Continue to track him until you find his home address. Don't miss any clues. A cold voice came from inside the window. Yes, young master. But young master, when I was reporting to you just now, there was news from the front. There's news from the front lines that the target has disappeared. Disappeared? What the F***? The Flash? I wonder why young master is so persistent in looking for this person? The young man inside the window sighed, but had a you don't understand expression on his face. In order to find Wang Ling, he had been looking for him for a full 6 years. Since the spirit beast rampage that year, he had been looking for information on this youngster. And it was only this year that he had finally made some headway. Why do you want to find this person? The young man in the car couldn't say anything. Because he's my Shifu. What? Young master Shifu? The man in the suit next to him and the old driver all had astonished expressions on their faces. If anyone saw the young man in the car, they would definitely be surprised. Chapter 10. Wang Ling probably already didn't remember the demon rampage 6 years ago, but it was still vivid in his mind. As a matter of fact, by the time the reinforcements arrived at the coordinates of the gate between worlds, the huge green toad mentioned in the report had already been taken care of. There was a bloody hole in its white belly, and it was already lying on its back dead. This was a level 5 demonic beast. Among the demonic beasts, it was an all-powerful demonic king. Who on earth had done this? The cultivators who had arrived on the battlefield were talking animatedly. Attention, fellow Taoists. I sense an unusual aura up ahead. At that moment, someone suddenly noticed a hazy figure in the smoke up ahead. Another person quickly cast a Dao seal and cast a purification spell to disperse the smoke. As the spell swiftly cleared the smoke, people saw a 10-year-old child staring at the fallen sky-swallowing toad in front of him and trembling. In fact, purely out of anger. Hey, that's just a child. Fellow Taoist, you're too nervous. A female cultivator overflowing with motherly instincts pulled the trembling Wang Ling into her arms. 10-year-old Wang Ling was really too adorable. Anyone else would have been able to control themselves. Good boy, don't be afraid. Big sister will protect you. Wang Ling. Glancing at the madwoman who had stuffed him into the ball-shaped object, Wang Ling didn't dare move at all. He had just unleashed his spirit energy, and it was still unstable. At this moment, if he moved a finger, her head would fly into outer space. Fellow Taoist Silian, please let go of this Shota first. Look, he can't even breathe. I'm so sorry. This female cultivator called Silian hurriedly let go of her ball. Child, tell big sister, how did this demon beast die? Of course, there was no way Wang Ling would admit that he had knocked it down. At that time, he had just wanted to get away from this troublesome place as quickly as possible. Thus he casually picked a person. And this person just happened to be Jua, whose face was covered in dust as he walked out from the other end of the smoke. Jua remembered that he had just happened to be passing by when the gravitational wave had crushed him under a pile of buildings. When he broke out of the ground again, he was inexplicably recognized as the hero who killed the Demon King, burdened with glory that didn't belong to him in the first place. And seeing his false reputation piled higher and higher by public opinion, Ajwa had been thinking all these years. He had done his best to stick to his heart and not let himself drift along with these illusionary halos. At the same time, he continued to investigate in secret. It wasn't until last year that he found out the truth of the whole matter. This is 2F** King annoying. No matter what, I must catch this person. Then he forcefully acknowledged him as his master. Wang Ling never thought that Ajwa would actually investigate him. It seemed that his years of experience in the general administration of 100 schools had hardened his wings a lot. In fact, he did not leave. Instead, he cast the great invisibility spell to hide his figure and aura. Standing not far from Ajwa's luxury car, he used his heavenly eye to see all the memories in Ajwa's mind. He really couldn't remember much about what had happened 6 years ago, but now it seemed that this was indeed a rather thorny problem. Also, Ajwa's unilateral action of acknowledging him as his master was a real pain in the ass. Wang Ling felt that he should find an opportunity to resolve these trivial matters as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would become a big problem sooner or later. Saturday morning was a lot quieter than Wang Ling had imagined, but this was just the calm before the storm. When Wang Ling had looked in the mirror in the morning, he had noticed that his right eyelid was twitching nonstop. It would be naive to think that this was just a lack of sleep causing his eyelid to twitch. Wang Ling's twitching eyelid was one of the signs of disaster. Every time his eyelid twitched, nothing good happened. Wang Ling remembered that on the eve of the demon rampage 6 years ago, his eyelid had twitched all night, but at the time, he hadn't realized what it meant. Fortunately, after washing up, his hysterical eyelid had finally stopped twitching. Wang Ling calculated the time. From the time his eyelid twitched to the time it stopped, it hadn't lasted more than 3 minutes. Disaster level 2 stars. This was a disaster level chart based on how long his eyelid had twitched. His eyelid twitched from 0 to 5 minutes. Disaster level 2 stars. More than 5 minutes to an hour. Disaster level 3 stars. 1 hour to 6 hours. Disaster level 4 stars. 7 to 24 hours. Disaster level 5 stars. More than 24 hours. Planet explosion. More than 48 hours. Universe destruction. But a disaster level of 2 stars was still within Wang Ling's ability to cope. He glanced at the monster pen and the goblin eraser on the table. After he had enchanted these 2 stationery last night, the 2 gremlins had stayed up all night to finish his weekend homework. Now, they were sleeping soundly in their pen pouches. Everything seemed so harmonious. Wang Ling looked out the window. The sun shone down on the earth, and a breeze blew the willows. The earth was still rotating, and the universe was still operating. He had no idea what kind of trouble he would run into on this peaceful weekend. Changing out of his white rabbit pajamas, Wang Ling walked out of the bedroom. Mother Wang had already prepared breakfast. As usual, it was a medium-rare poached egg and 2 black pepper sausages. Son, come eat. Mother Wang seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. For the first time ever, Father Wang took the initiative to hand Wang Ling a black diamond fork. Handle it with care, don't break it. Wang Ling made a sound of agreement, controlled his strength, and carefully picked up the fork. Father Wang gave Wang Ling a secretive look and slanted his lips into a smile. Hurry up and eat. You have a date today, right? A date? Wang Ling raised his head. If it's not a date, please explain to me what's going on with the Maserati tank parked downstairs? Wang Ling went to the balcony in a daze and saw Lotus Sun waving at him from a distance, the smile on her face as bright as that of an overlord flower. F***K. How on earth did this guy know his address? Wang Ling felt that the disaster level this time had been severely underestimated. Back at the dining table, Father Wang's face brimmed with a kind expression. Son, you don't need to explain to me. Dad supports you. Father Wang smiled. The girl downstairs is very sensible. This morning, she even gave your mom a L'Oreal limited edition youth-retaining elixir. Look at how happy your mom is. So you were bought over by a youth-retaining elixir just like that? If you don't come back tonight, be careful. Father Wang smiled. Pay attention to safety in all aspects. Wang Ling. Then, Father Wang mysteriously took out a box of natural rubber products from his pocket and pushed it in front of Wang Ling. He had a gratified expression on his face that said, "My son has grown up." There was a click. Chapter 11. Today's society was much more open than before and advocated free love, so it was already common for high school students to fall in love. But the premise was that it had to be safe. Wang Ling didn't think he would do anything that crossed the line. But the problem was that he had never said that he wanted to go on a date with Lotus Sun. So what the hell was this uninvited coming to his door? Disaster level 2 stars. It was as if Wang Ling could already see what would happen if he refused Lotus Sun's invitation. First of all, news of number 60 high school would definitely start to spread like wildfire. At that time, Wang Ling would be drowned in spit and become the target of everyone's condemnation. Wang Ling hated being the center of attention, but this situation would attract the attention of the whole school and even neighboring schools. This was a thorny problem. Wang Ling looked at Mother Wang next to him. Mother Wang didn't think it was a bad thing for a girl to take a liking to Wang Ling. Wang Ling hadn't had many close friends since he was young. If a girl took a liking to Wang Ling, it meant that her son was very charming. The most important thing was that this person was the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. She had actually come knocking on his door of her own accord, which gave Mother Wang an indescribable sense of pride. So after considering all these points in thousands of words, in the end, Mother Wang waved her hand. Be careful when you go out. If you dare refuse, you'll never see your beloved crispy noodle snacks again in this lifetime. Wang Ling. Women were always so dictatorial when they were on the same page. Glancing at the big youth-retaining pill in Mother Wang's hand, Wang Ling felt deeply regretful that he had let Lotus Sun seize the initiative. In fact, whether he accepted the invitation or not, it would attract the attention of the whole school and even neighboring schools. The difference was that if he refused the invitation, he would end up worse than if he didn't. Not only would he be the target of bullying, he would also receive a lot of attention. No matter what he chose, he would still be noticed. Then, this matter was no longer something that could be resolved by accepting the invitation or not. Wang Ling's current battle was how to carry out this date without attracting attention. When Wang Ling got into the car, Lotus Sun felt like she was dreaming. It had been 5 whole days since the start of school, and she had done everything she could to get closer to Wang Ling. But this otherworldly youngster had always shown a lack of interest in her. Now that he was actually sitting in her car, she felt that her visit this time was really worth it. When he got into the car, he felt like he was dreaming. If he wasn't dreaming, then he must have been hit in the head to accept such an invitation. It was a limited edition Maserati supercar, with Huaguo Water Curtain Group's logo on the outside. Coupled with Lotus Sun sitting next to it, Wang Ling's first impression was that Huaguo Water Curtain Group was announcing to the world that they had taken in a son-in-law. Forget it. This was all for his crispy noodle snacks. This was what Wang Ling thought. Now that he thought about it, given Huaguo Water Curtain Group's influence in Huaxiao Nation, it wouldn't have been difficult for Lotus Sun to investigate his family's location. Glancing out of the corner of his eye at the Wang family's small villa, which was getting further and further away, he wondered if he should use the Great Star Shifting spell to change the location of the Wang family's small villa on the map when he came back this time. Classmate Wang Ling, I never thought you would actually accept my invitation. Lotus Sun smiled brightly, feeling happy from the bottom of her heart. The dimples on her face made her look very sweet. Speechless, Wang Ling pursed his lips. Did he have the right to refuse? What Wang Ling hadn't expected was that Lotus Sun actually didn't put on any makeup. Even with her bare face, she still managed to outshine most girls her age. She was indeed the epitome of a beauty. He had to admit that Lotus Sun was indeed very beautiful, but he felt a little uncomfortable that she had unilaterally come knocking on his door for a date. Then where are we going? Classmate Wang Ling, is there anywhere in particular you want to go? Wang Ling shook his head. After that, Lotus Sun simply made the decision. Master Lu, drive the car to the Xiao family compound?" "Yes, Mississippi," the driver replied very politely. The Xiao family compound was actually the name of a park, which had been opened up by the Xiao clan, a 1,000-year-old cultivation clan. This piece of land used to be the Xiao family's old residence. It belonged to the Xiao family since 1,000 years ago. In order to cater to the needs of modern construction, the Xiao family only used a spell a few years ago to move all the buildings from the old residence away and build a new park on the land. It was worth mentioning that Huaxiao Nation's famous Heavenly Flame Museum was also located in the Xiao family compound. As early as 1,000 years ago, the Xiao family had collected almost all of the heavenly flames in the world. Now this park had already become a dating mecca for boys and girls. Every night at 12 o'clock, there would be a fireworks party on the central lake in the park. At that time, members of the Xiao clan would fuse 2 or more heavenly flames together on a high platform to form a fire lotus, which would then be tossed into the air to let it bloom. Following Lotus Sun's instructions, the driver parked the car in a small corner of the park, then got out. He opened the car doors for Wang Ling and Lotus Sun one after another, and finally gave Lotus Sun a black card. This was Huaguo Water Curtain Group's equity card. With this card, one could enjoy super treatment that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. Wang Ling hadn't expected Huaguo Water Curtain Group to actually have a stake in a newly built park like the Xiao family compound, which was simply terrifying. With this equity card, there was no place in the world that Lotus Sun couldn't go. But compared with the aristocratic treatment that the equity card could provide, Wang Ling was more concerned about whether he could use it to exchange for a crispy noodle snack from the snack shop. That was right, Wang Ling was such an unambitious person. The Xiao family compound was very large. This piece of land, which the Xiao clan had owned for 1,000 years, had been expanded during the 3 great eras of the cultivation world. It had first been built during the Great Battle Qi era, when the Xiao clan had been the world's leading figures. After that, the wheel of time had continued to move forward, and the spirit energy era had once again been the Xiao clan's lowest point. Because of the cracks in the chaotic space, all the battle qi in the world had been sucked dry, leading to the early arrival of the spirit energy era. As for the era that Wang Ling was currently living in, it was the 3rd era after Huaxiao Nation had become a nation in the spirit energy era, the spirit energy information era. It was also known as the scientific cultivation era. As a clan that had experienced the changes of 3 great eras, the Xiao clan was undoubtedly a veteran of the era. Thus, even though the Xiao clan had declined during the spirit energy era, but the entire clan's cultivation talent had allowed them to reinvent themselves time and time again in order to catch up. This was how the Xiao clan of the spirit energy information era came about. Looking at the current forces in Huaxiao Nation, the Xiao clan was still ranked in the top 10. Although it no longer had the dominance it once had, it was still an unshakable powerhouse. The only pity was that the heavenly flames that the Xiao clan had collected from all over the world had now lost the explosive power of a nuclear bomb because of the disappearance of battle qi. Apart from fusing the heavenly flames at midnight and setting off fireworks, there didn't seem to be any other use. Chapter 12. Wang Ling did a rough estimate of how big the Xiao family compound was. It was roughly the size of 1,000 Wang family small villas. If it was converted into crispy noodle snacks, it could probably hold 1 billion packets of crispy noodle snacks. A few years before the Xiao family compound was built, Wang Ling had always wanted to visit it, but the expensive ticket prices had always kept him back. In contrast, he would rather spend the same amount of money to buy crispy noodle snacks. Although this unexpected date hadn't been his intention, Wang Ling felt that it wasn't bad to come out once in a while to relax. The Xiao family compound had a few scenic spots. Most of these scenic spots were from the earliest Doqi era. At that time, the Xiao family had paid a huge price to move these ancient buildings to the Xiao family compound. Today, these ancient buildings had become famous scenic spots that enjoyed a high reputation throughout the world. The compound's park guide led Lotus Sun and Wang Ling through a special green passageway in the park. This passageway had been specially set up for senior executives who held equity cards, and was usually unattended. Wang Ling, who wasn't used to being exposed to the public, felt a little relieved. The only awkward thing was that they didn't speak on the way, which made Lotus Sun feel a little powerless. The guide girl had been professionally trained by the Xiao clan, and knew the layout of the park like the back of her hand. When they reached a fork in the road, she stopped and smiled at Wang Ling and Lotus Sunday. Respected Mr. Wang and Miss Sun. This fork now leads to 3 scenic spots: Cosmic Cave, Treasure Cliff, and the Heart Demon Stone. Where would you like to visit first? Wang Ling didn't say anything, and quietly waited for Lotus Sun to make a decision. Lotus Sun also seemed to have completely accepted Wang Ling's reticence. Although she knew that she still had a long way to go before she could influence this block of wood, at least she could drag him to the park today. This should be considered a crucial first step on the road to revolution, right? Back to the 3 scenic spots: Cosmic Cave, Treasure Cliff, and the Heart Demon Stone. Lotus Sun had heard of these 3 scenic spots, but she had never visited them before, and didn't know what they meant. Before coming to the Xiao family compound, Lotus Sun had done some research online. Based on the online reviews alone, Universe Cave had a lot of good reviews, and it was quite popular among the men. It wasn't easy to ask classmate Wang Ling out. You have to work hard. In fact, in the end, it was just to cater to Wang Ling, and Lotus Sun quickly made a decision. Then let's go to Cosmic Cave first. Yes, Miss Lotus Sunday, the tour guide nodded. Then they got on the bus that had been arranged for them at the fork in the road, and followed the green passage, all the way to the entrance of the scenic area. The bus stopped next to the stone tablet with the words Heaven and Earth Cave engraved on it, and Lotus Sun couldn't help asking in puzzlement, why isn't there a single person here? The tour guide smiled. Today is supposed to be the maintenance day of the Cosmic Cave, but Miss Sun has a share card, so she can enjoy special treatment. I see. Lotus Sun nodded. Following the guide's guidance, they arrived at the so-called Cosmic Cave's entrance in less than 50 meters. Wang Ling stared left and right at the cave, through which a cool breeze whistled from time to time. The spirit energy was so thin that it was almost negligible, and the structure of the cave couldn't be any more ordinary. The stone walls of the cave from the Great Battle Qi era were already uneven from wind erosion. Apart from the cave's age, Wang Ling couldn't see anything special about it. Such an ordinary cave could actually become a national scenic area. Wang Ling felt that either the Huaxiao National Tourism Administration was blind, or there was definitely something shady going on. The tour guide smiled. Next, let me explain the legend of the Cosmic Cave to Miss Sun and Mr. Wang. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun both nodded and listened attentively. In the first 2 eras of the cultivation world, which we're familiar with, the Great Battle Qi era, and the second stage, the Spirit Energy era, the world was very chaotic. The 3 races of humans, demons, and demons were one. It wasn't until the Spirit Energy Information era that the human race opened the gate between worlds and drove away demon beasts and magical beasts. Before this, there were many cultivators who were injured in battle. This Cosmic Cave was a hiding place for human cultivators at that time. The tour guide explained very seriously. In the Great Battle Qi era, there was a kind of spirit medicine called the cosmic grass in the Cosmic Cave. This spirit medicine had a miraculous effect on healing wounds. But at the same time, this spirit medicine also had a certain degree of sexual stimulation. Many female cultivators mistakenly ate the cosmic grass, and in the cave, they lost a lot of blood. Thus, the Cosmic Cave was also known as the Blood Cave or the Moon Cave. Because of all kinds of coincidences, countless pairs of cultivators were brought together. Lotus Sun's little face instantly turned red. So this was the King main reason why the Cosmic Cave was so well received? This was too ridiculous. When all was said and done, she was a tour guide specially trained by the Xiao clan to receive dignitaries. To be able to explain the legend in such a serious manner, she was definitely a veteran of 100 battles. Even Wang Ling was stupefied. He had thought that this was a fairly serious story, and had never expected the style to change so quickly. Of course, the Cosmic Cave wasn't the only strange attraction in the Xiao family compound. After that, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun visited Treasure Cliff, the Stone of the Heart Demon, and the ancient auction house, which had spread far and wide. These cultivation classics, which had been passed down for thousands of years, all bore the shameful history of their predecessors. Treasure Cliff. According to legend, anyone who jumped down from this cliff would definitely pick up an ancient treasure. But according to modern scientific research, those old cultivators who claimed to have obtained ancient treasures were in fact suffering from severe schizophrenia. The Stone of the Heart Demon was the main place where ancient cultivators swore an oath to their inner demons. Once they swore an oath to their inner demons, they couldn't violate it no matter what. But in the spirit energy information era, the existence of inner demons was already completely denied. These were all extremely unreliable cultivation superstitions. In the Great Battle Chi era and the Spirit Energy era, almost every powerful cultivator who entered the annals of history had an earth-shattering experience at an auction house. If they hadn't squandered millions or even billions in one go at an auction house, they wouldn't be able to call themselves a veteran of that era. But according to modern historical research, these auction figures were actually exaggerated, and weren't as exaggerated as the legends made them out to be. Another thing worth mentioning was that the Foundation Establishment Pill, which was widely rumored in ancient texts to be able to advance to the Foundation Establishment stage with just one pill, was actually complete nonsense. It was the same as saying that there was no wife in a wife cake, there was no lion in a lion's head, and there was no husband and wife in a husband and wife lung slice. After walking around the Xiao family compound, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were both deeply moved. Both Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were deeply moved, and they finally had a certain understanding of the Xiao family compound's scenic spots. What they had walked through and seen wasn't just a simple scenery. Chapter 13. The entire date was a lot more harmonious than Wang Ling had imagined. Overall, Wang Ling was quite satisfied. Now he just had to wait until the fireworks party was over and go home, and his mission would be considered a success. Lotus Sun's thoughts were the exact opposite of Wang Ling's. This date was even deadlier than she had expected. Good heavens! It hadn't been easy for her to ask classmate Wang Ling out. Lotus Sun felt that she couldn't give up just like that. The girl's beautiful eyes blinked as she looked at Wang Ling, and at the same time, she seemed to be deep in thought. Should she do something else after the fireworks party? For example, find a deserted dark place where the two of them could face each other, chat or something. At 12 o'clock in the evening, a lot of men and women had gathered at the fireworks party at the fountain in the center of the Xiao family compound. Some hugged each other, some hugged each other, some sat together on giant flying swords and showed off their affection. They watched the fireworks in all sorts of positions. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun found a relatively secluded spot and sat down next to each other as they obediently waited for the fireworks to start. The scene became awkward once again. Humans were very strange creatures. It was just a thin layer of window paper, but it was hard to pierce through it. Lotus Sun was very embarrassed. This was clearly a date that had been painstakingly planned, but at that moment, she felt like an idiot. Just as she was about to say something, she swallowed it back down. Wang Ling was also very embarrassed. In this kind of situation, Wang Ling's usual way of dealing with it was to erase her memory. In this way, he could erase other people's good impressions of him, so that he could continue to live a low-key life. Huaguo Water Curtain Group, the young miss of one of the top 500 companies in the world. For Wang Ling, who was used to keeping a low profile, this kind of person was too dazzling. Gazing at the night sky, Wang Ling was wondering what kind of opportunity he should find to cast the spell, when his right eyelid twitched fiercely at that moment. Wang Ling's heart skipped a beat. A disaster warning? How could there be a warning at this time? In any case, because of his twitching eyelid, Wang Ling was completely on guard. At that moment, the fireworks party had officially begun. Standing on a high platform, the people of the Xiao clan gradually fused the two bright heavenly flames, which then slowly turned into a fire lotus that flew into the air. The fire lotus slowly rose like a Kongming lantern, and then its colorful petals gradually unfurled. Bang! The dazzling light condensed into a single point, dragging along the falling sparks, and exploded in the void. The black night was instantly dyed with all sorts of beautiful purples and reds. Just when everyone was immersed in the scenery, a figure appeared in front of them. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw two men in black quickly approaching them. His intuition told him that these two people were after Lotus Sunday. These two people had arrived behind Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, but Lotus Sun was completely unaware of them. By the time Lotus Sun sensed the threatening coldness behind her, it was already too late. One of the men in black reached out and pressed down on Lotus Sun's shoulder, while the other quickly pressed the cold muzzle of a gun against Wang Ling's back. "Who are you and what do you want?" Lotus Sun was a little surprised, but her overall reaction was a lot calmer than Wang Ling had imagined. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows leisurely. In the end, she was the future successor cultivated by Huaguo Water Curtain Group. She did not panic in this critical situation. The man in black's voice was very low. "We don't want to hurt Miss Lotus Sun and her boyfriend, but I hope Miss Lotus Sun won't resist and come with us obediently. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that this gun won't go off by accident." Cold sweat trickled down Lotus Sun's forehead. She knew very well that the bullets in this gun were all enhanced spirit energy bullets, which could easily pierce through the body of a Foundation establishment cultivator. She had received professional training and guidance from the group, and knew how to react when encountering this kind of situation. She gritted her teeth. "He's just my classmate, not my boyfriend. If you have anything to say, you can come at me. I'll go with you, okay? Please let classmate Wang Ling go." Lotus Sun could only judge the strength of the two men in black from the strength of their hands. They were both core formation experts, and from the looks of their hands, they should be top-notch assassins. It was almost impossible for them to escape. "You're from Shadow Stream?" Lotus Sun recognized the insignia on the men in black's clothes almost at a glance. Shadow Stream was a well-known assassination organization in Huaxiu Nation. It took on kidnappings, assassinations and so on all year round, and was well known in the industry for their professional integrity. The killers they sent out would never betray their employers, even if they died. Furthermore, if they could hire Shadow Stream to deal with her, then at the very least, their employer was no weaker than Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Huaguo Water Curtain Group had enemies both at home and abroad, but who on earth wanted to harm her? But now wasn't the time to think about these things. Lotus Sun felt that the best thing to do now was to reduce the number of hostages first. Finally, she would think of a way to inform the outside world. At the same time, Wang Ling also read her thoughts. This was indeed a normal way to deal with an emergency, but the two men in black were clearly prepared and very cunning. One of them took out a black pill from his trouser pocket. "This is a sleeping pill. After swallowing it, you'll fall asleep quickly. As long as your classmate is willing to take it, there's no harm in letting him go." This was to prevent Wang Ling from immediately going out to inform the outside world. There were too many people now, and to be honest, Wang Ling didn't want to do it himself. Swallowing the man in black's pill, and pretending to be asleep, then doing as Lotus Sun thought, he could teleport to Huaguo Water Curtain Group to inform the outside world. This was probably the least conspicuous method. Alright, now, I should be able to take this opportunity to end this boring game of playing house, Wang Ling thought. But as he stretched out his hand to take the pill, Wang Ling could clearly hear Lotus Sun's thoughts at that moment. Great, as long as classmate Wang Ling is fine. As long as classmate Wang Ling can escape. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes widened in astonishment. There was a dead silence in the air, and Wang Ling lowered his head in the midst of such a chaotic fireworks party. Wang Ling felt his five senses magnify infinitely, and he could clearly hear Lotus Sun's frightened breathing. No matter what kind of training she had received from the group, in the end, she was just a weak girl. Wang Ling's face darkened, and he didn't say a word. Then, the two men in black stared blankly, as Wang Ling directly crushed the pill into flying ash. Damn it! The men in black were so angry that their faces contorted. Was he openly provoking them? He was just a 16-year-old high school student. What the hell was he so arrogant about? Did he think he was a nascent soul, or a soul formation cultivator? Wang Ling got up, and looked at the two men in black gloomily. Just as the man in black was about to pull the trigger, Wang Ling moved at the same time. His hand was like an electric snake, so fast that no one's eyes could follow it as he swiftly snatched the gun. The texture wasn't bad, Wang Ling thought to himself, his expression quite indifferent, as if he was playing with a child's toy. If this kind of trash wanted to break through his divine body, it would be too immature. The two shadow stream killers had no time to react at all. A crisp crack rang out in their ears. While the two of them were still in shock, their pupils suddenly shrank. This scene in front of them made them sweat profusely. This gun had actually been directly shattered in Wang Ling's palm. As the breeze blew, it was reduced to fine powder drifting in the air. F***K. The eyes of the two men in black widened. This was a F***King gun body, made of ninth heaven black iron. Lotus Sun was also stupefied and didn't understand what had happened. Student Wang Ling was only at the foundation establishment stage. How could he be so strong? Your Excellency, who on earth are you? The two shadow stream killers were terrified. They wanted to leave, but their bodies were suppressed by a powerful spiritual pressure, and they were completely immobilized. Leisurely brushing the dust off his pants, Wang Ling raised his head and looked at the two men calmly. A look that couldn't be any more ordinary had caused the bodies of the two assassins to tremble hysterically. Who on earth are you? The aura exuded by a 16-year-old high school student was 1,000,000 times more powerful than any of the people they had assassinated in their lives. It was as if they were looking at a gigantic demon god 10,000 feet tall, and the aura of death instantly gripped their throats. Wang Ling didn't say anything, and just grabbed their heads with one hand. In any case, these two men wouldn't betray their employer even if they died, right? What do you want to do? Nothing. Just send you to heaven, Wang Ling replied in his heart. He picked up one person with each hand, as easily as if he were carrying two chicks. Imitating the gestures of the Shao clan people on the high platform, he instantly divided the two men into pixel-like particles, and then slowly rolled them into a ball. In one spurt of energy, he turned them into a stream of light, and sent them into the most beautiful night sky. There was a loud bang. A moment later, this Buddha's angry human lotus abruptly exploded in the air along with brilliant fireworks. The scattered sparks were magnificent and dazzling, and then drifted down bit by bit, turning into specks of starlight, before finally vanishing into nothingness. Wang Ling calmly looked at the extinguished fireworks and patted the dust off his hands. He always felt that using the legendary Shao clan's unique skill, Buddha's angry fire lotus, wasn't as difficult as he had imagined. As he tossed them into the air, Wang Ling extracted the memories of the two killers in passing. That very night, he made a video file and anonymously sent it to Huagua Water Curtain Group. Chapter 14. Replacing memories was the most reliable way Wang Ling could think of to eliminate the impact of the incident. Strictly speaking, this was less likely to give him away than erasing his memory. This was because erasing one's memory would result in a period of memory gap, but replacing one's memory was different. This kind of spell wouldn't make one's memory blank, and it wouldn't affect one's body and mind in any way. It was just that he couldn't control exactly what kind of memories they were replaced with. Especially after the memory swap, even Lotus Sun herself couldn't accurately describe the whole story. She had already completely forgotten how Wang Ling had personally helped her, let alone that spectacular Buddha's angry human lotus. Instead, she had used her imagination and the memory replacement spell to make up a story about a peerless expert coming to her rescue. As for who this hero who had saved her and Wang Ling was, even she couldn't say for sure. Thus, early in the morning on the second week of school, Wang Ling heard all kinds of gossip and slanders in class. Li Xianjing. I heard that classmate Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun went on a date, and even ran into two bad guys. Super Chen. I heard that classmate Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun had a one-night stand, and even ran into two bad guys. In the end, they were rescued by a peerless expert, Master of Dopey. I heard that when classmate Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun were on a date, They were watching cannons with a peerless expert, Dopey. I heard that when classmate Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun were on a date, two bad guys showed up and were shot away by a peerless expert, Feather Lin. I heard that when classmate Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun were on a date, they ran into two bad guys and were sent flying by. Classmate Wang Ling's gay buddy, a peerless expert. Wang Ling. That's enough. Then this peerless expert became the unsolved mystery of this year's students. Speaking of gossip, one person had to be mentioned here. The teacher of theory of history Wang Zukong. #1 most popular teacher of the year in number 60 high school. The students had always had a high opinion of this old antiques teaching style. The reason why he was called an antique was because teacher Wang Zukong knew a lot of gossip about cultivation history. Unfortunately, these gossips were different from what was written in the textbooks. The freshness of the unknown and the curiosity of the students towards gossip. As a result, the students who listened to Old Antique's lecture were more willing to listen to this unknown historical gossip than the textbook's rigid theory of history. Thus, over time, Old Antique gained the resounding title of Immortal Master 8 Trigrams. For the students, these cultivation history gossips were the real test points. From time to time, Old Antique's favorite thing to do was to bring up some gossip in class to liven up the atmosphere. Hence, the atmosphere in Old Antique's class had always been pretty good, and no one felt sleepy at all. Even if there were one or two who couldn't take it anymore, they would eventually be woken up by the laughter around them. The only pity was that there was only one history class per week. Thus, even the students of the ordinary and remedial classes cherished the opportunity to attend a theory of history class. Old Antique's theory of history class in particular basically hadn't rung yet, but all the students were already sitting in their respective seats, waiting quietly for a burly fatty to waddle into the classroom. Last time, we just started with reruns and evolution of Huaxiao Nation's ancient TV series. So let's continue. Students who haven't eaten breakfast can take out your buns when I'm not looking. If I see you, your buns are mine. It just so happens that I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Hearing that Old Antique hadn't even eaten breakfast in order to attend class, the students were deeply moved, and they hurriedly handed over their private stash of snacks from their bellies. You're forcing me to make a mistake. It's a matter of style. How can I eat in a teacher's class? Although Old Antique said this, he still stretched out his hand to take away the packets of spicy strips offered by the students in the front row as he shouted, "Don't do it again. It would be impolite to refuse." This was a typical case of saying no, but his body was very honest. Chewing on a spicy strip while gossiping, just the thought of it was awesome. Is there anyone who wants to ask questions about the content of the last class? Leaning against the lectern, Old Antique casually pulled out a spicy strip, held it between his fingers like he was smoking a cigarette, and started to chew it in his mouth. Teacher, the last class ended too abruptly, and some students didn't hear the key points you highlighted. Someone raised their hand. Okay, I understand. Then let's quickly go through it again. Everyone turn to page 10. The first key point of this unit is the number of reruns of Princess Pearl and Journey to the West, and I want everyone to memorize them. Page 11 is about romance TV series, from constant abortions to the historical evolution of not being able to kiss. The 12th page is about a fantasy TV series, from a serious player playing The Legend of the Sword and Fairy to a serious killer. Page 13 is about harem TV series, from scheming 3,000 concubines in the harem to infertility. Page 14 is about military TV series, from the spirit of Italian cannons drawing their swords to tearing chickens apart on the battlefield. The changes in the mental journey of protecting the country. These are the important points of this unit. Please make sure to take notes in your notebooks. At this point, Old Antique had already finished eating the pack of spicy strips. He took out a tissue he had prepared on him, wiped the oil off his fingers, and said, "Then let's start with the story of Princess Pearl." The show had officially begun. As soon as Old Antique finished speaking, there was instantly a lot of cheering. "Good. Brother Kong is mighty. Long live Old Antique." Aha! Old Antique coughed lightly, and grade 1, Class 3 instantly fell silent, leaving only Old Antique's voice. Although I know that there must be students who have watched this classic TV series, Princess Pearl, I'm a fan of the original work, so I prefer to discuss issues from the story itself. Our number 60 high school library has the original work, and students who are interested can read it for themselves and feel the charm of the original work. As everyone knew, at the end of the Great Do-Chi era, due to the appearance of a crack in the chaos dimension, all the Do-Chi in the world was sucked dry. This allowed the cultivators to develop spiritual power and use it as a second source of Do-Chi. But research showed that if the crack in the chaotic space wasn't repaired, the spirit chi in the world would be sucked dry sooner or later. And at that time, an important figure called Gidge appeared. Saying this, Old Antique's eyes lit up. Let's talk about Gidge's background first. She was a good-for-nothing and a cripple, and had no place at all in the original era of battle chi. However, Gidge's indomitable will, and the core values of cultivation, that she carried out from the beginning to the end allowed her to stand at the top of the world. At that time, the only way to plug the crack in the space was to find the 10 chaos beads scattered all over the world. In the end, this Gidge successfully collected the chaos beads and plugged the crack in the space. Thus, the world made a TV series about this Gidge. Then Princess Pearl came into being. Alright, the story of my fair princess ends here. When Old Antique said this, there was already a thunderous round of applause in commemoration of this brilliant and inspiring theory of history lecture. This Gidge had actually collected the 10 chaos beads scattered all over the continent on her own. She was truly a top female cultivator. Chapter 15. The reruns and evolution of Huaxio Nation's ancient TV series wasn't an easy lesson to teach. Take the TV series Princess Pearl for example. At first glance, it sounded like an inspirational cultivation drama about a loser making a comeback, but it involved a lot of culture and historical facts, as well as some points in time that needed to be firmly remembered. These were all compulsory exam points for the next monthly test. Although the theory of history class was short, it was a hurdle that had to be passed. If you failed the theory of history class more than twice, you wouldn't even be able to get a graduation certificate. For this reason, even elite class students like Lotus Sun and Super Chen had put in a lot of hard work and thought behind the scenes. But Wang Ling was different. He had been born with a photographic memory, and there was practically nothing he didn't know about Huaxio Nation's nearly 5,000 years of history. But Wang Ling was still very willing to listen to Old Antique's lessons. Listening to Old Antique's gossip once in a while was very good for his physical and mental health. In Old Antique's own words, even if he used up all the ugly words in the dictionary, he still wouldn't be able to express his gloom about the countless melodramatic and bizarre plots in ancient TV series. But when it came to these depressing things, Old Antique's chatterbox couldn't be stopped at all, and he went on and on like a torrential river. Of course, it's undeniable that there are also a lot of excellent films and TV series in ancient TV series, such as the large-scale anti-enemy film Italian Canon, and the Shao family compound, which depicts the growth of a family and the changes of times. When Old Antique said this, a lot of people in the audience smiled knowingly. They knew that Old Antique's time for gossip had begun. I heard that 2 students in class were ambushed by a killer organization when they were strolling in the park recently. Speaking of the Shao family compound, it could be said that everyone had heard about it in the last 2 days. Everyone knew that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had run into Shadow Stream killers while strolling in the park. As the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, the fact that Lotus Sun had been kidnapped by Shadow Stream naturally attracted the attention of the top management of number 60 high school. Almost immediately after Lotus Sun's assassination attempt, Headmaster Chen called for an emergency meeting. Patrols in the school's open spaces and corridors were stepped up, and teams of 2 or 3 teachers were formed to prevent the killers sent by Shadow Stream from harming student Lotus Sun again. Outside the school, Huaguo Water Curtain Group had also specially hired round-the-clock bodyguards. Eliminate any suspicious people passing through the school gate. Although Shadow Stream's first mission had already failed, since they had received orders from the higher-ups, This organization's usual style was to never give up until they reached their goal. In order to ensure the safety of the students, the teachers of number 60 high school had been swamped these 2 days. As a master of gossip who was always on the front line among teachers, Old Antique's ability to gossip was so strong that even Master of Dopey couldn't keep up with him. Shadowstream is a very mysterious organization, and the killers it sends out are all highly professional. Because it belongs to a certain foreign group, Huashio Nation has never been able to properly restrict its activities. Old Antique smiled, and the time for gossip officially began. But as far as I know, the mastermind behind Shadowstream is actually in this country. The legendary Audiobook, who had graduated from our school, had once proposed a plan to wipe out the domestic Shadowstream forces at the annual conference of the General Administration of 100 schools. After the proposal was passed, the General Administration of 100 schools issued a call for help and gathered over 100 powerful golden core cultivators. Everyone listened intently, and Superchin couldn't help asking, what was the final result? Of course it was a failure. Old Antique sighed and shook his head regretfully. At that time, everyone agreed on the policy of capturing the ringleader first. After deciding on the decapitation operation, over 100 people on all kinds of flying swords and magic treasures charged in from all directions to encircle and annihilate the apartment where the master of Shadowstream was. But unfortunately, in the end, we still let this guy escape. It really wasn't that those 100 cultivators weren't brave enough, but that the enemy was too cunning. The students were in an uproar. No one had expected the General Administration of 100 schools to have actually planned such a spectacular feat. Old Antique was Old Antique in the end. As a theory of history teacher, his foundation in literature was by no means ordinary. After giving a brief account of the decapitation operation from beginning to end, he finally enlarged the key points of the decapitation operation and combined it with some simple illusion spells and his superb storytelling skills, perfectly acted out the operation at that time. It was like watching a blockbuster movie, and it gave people the feeling that they were there. Of course, there were also some bloody scenes that Old Antique had imagined himself, which made several female students in the class cry out in alarm. At the end of the story, Old Antique heaved a long sigh. Although the decapitation operation failed in the end, it still had its own significance. At least it passed that time. Huashio Nation's anti-terrorism department finally figured out the master of Shadowstream's gender. The master of Shadowstream's gender? Don't tell me it's a bro with chest hair? Superchin teased. Featherlin hurriedly retorted. It must be an abstinent underworld boy. Master of Dopey pushed up his glasses. Maybe this great killer behind the scenes is a dog lover. In the end, it was Old Antique himself who revealed the answer. At that time, when a group of cultivators rushed into the apartment, they found that the master of Shadowstream had already fled. But it's very likely that she had blended in with the cultivators who had participated in the decapitation operation. Because the master of Shadowstream was very good at transfiguration. Then how did you discover the master of Shadowstream's true gender? The main thing was that in the apartment where the master of Shadowstream was staying, we found cosmetics that had just been opened. There were also bikini panties on the bed, and 36D, cough cough. Male students, you can imagine for yourselves that this is a proper class, and school buses are forbidden. Old Antique looked at the time, then tidied up the lectern, and bluntly put the remaining packets of spicy sticks in his pocket. Okay, that's all for today's class. There's no homework today, so go back and review the chapters in Journey to the West in the next class. Finally, I would like to remind everyone that you must be careful when you're outside. If you run into any bad guys, you can call me, and I'll flick them to death with a piece of chalk. After his lecture, Old Antique left amid the enthusiastic cheers of the whole class. The outside world had always had its own conclusions about the master of Shadowstream's gender. But after hearing Old Antique's gossip, the whole of number 60 high school spread the master of Shadowstream's true gender that very day. Number 60 high school's exclusive UC Shock department was the first to make a move and sent out a tweet on the school's public platform, Shock. The mastermind behind the legendary foreign killer organization ShadowStream is actually a 36D bosom tyrant. The power of gossip was strong, and headlines like this spread all over major online platforms in just a few hours. After that, something troublesome happened that no one had expected. Chapter 16. In the headmaster's office, Headmaster Chen clasped his hands together and rested his head on his hands as he stared at the letter of challenge on his desk. Have you investigated the situation? Headmaster Chen, we have. ShadowStream's seal is very special, and it was verified by the Cultivation police that this letter of challenge was indeed sent by ShadowStream. Director Shi frowned. To be honest, she hadn't expected ShadowStream to issue such an overt declaration of war to a high school, and had even threatened to complete the assassination plan on student Lotus Sun on campus, as revenge for what had happened that day in the Xiao family compound. It looks like the situation has become troublesome. Headmaster Chen lit a cigarette and took a drag. If ShadowStream sends a strong enough expert, given our current teaching strength, it will be very difficult to restrict their activities. Student Lotus Sun is in a very dangerous situation. So, what do the higher-ups mean now? They want us to protect student Lotus Sun before she leaves the school, and then apply to the general administration of 100 schools to upgrade our school's security measures in the near future. Director Shi, do you know how long until the next alliance of 100 schools? About a month's time. There are 12 districts and 36 ordinary high schools in Songhai City. Currently, we rank third among the 3 in Peiyuan District. Director Shi, number 60 high school's daily ranking at the bottom had already become the norm. Headmaster Chen sighed. If we accept the higher-up's suggestion, it will be the same as saying that our school's leaders are incompetent. If those 2 old men from number 58 high school and number 59 high school want to stir up trouble, they'll definitely make a big deal out of this, and will be further and further away from becoming a key city high school. So, Lord Headmaster, what do you mean? Our overall teaching strength might not be strong, but there are still some comrades who are very capable. Headmaster Chen thought for a while, then crushed the cigarette butt. I don't care how Huaguo Water Curtain Group and the Cultivation police protect student Lotus Sun after she leaves the school. But we must be fully responsible for her safety on campus, and we must ensure that nothing goes wrong. Then, what should we do now? Refuse the higher-up's suggestion to leave the school, take student Lotus Sun to her private classroom, and leave that person behind to protect her. Tell the higher-ups that if student Lotus Sun loses even a hair, I'll bring my head back. Headmaster Chen sneered. They're just a bunch of lowly, shady hooligans. If they dare to come, we'll F***CK them up. Director Shi broke out in a cold sweat. Of course, she knew who the person Headmaster Chen was talking about was. However, if they really sent that teacher to take action personally, Director Shi felt that it was really like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Not long after ShadowStream's assassination challenge was issued, number 60 middle school immediately took comprehensive measures to protect student Lotus Sunday. He directly moved Lotus Sun's desk to the teacher's office. Lotus Sun was of course very unwilling to do this, because she wouldn't be able to see Wang Ling this way. But unable to withstand the pressure from the school and Huaguo Water Curtain Group, Lotus Sun finally compromised. Wang Ling had never expected that after that unpleasant date in the Xiao family compound, he would never have thought that. The memory swap hadn't reduced Lotus Sun's impression of him. On the contrary, it had increased. Because according to Huaguo Water Curtain Group's investigation, the assassination attempt in the Xiao family compound the last time had actually been premeditated. According to ShadowStream's original plan, Lotus Sun would have been unable to escape even if she had wings. Unfortunately, the variable of this peerless expert had appeared. Lotus Sun felt that she had gotten completely lucky, and naturally believed that this luck had been given to her by Wang Ling. Wang Ling felt a headache coming on when it came to this beautiful girl, who was the self-inventing type. It was Friday in the second week of school, and the announcement of ShadowStream's challenge had arrived. Today, Shadowstream would send out a first-class killer to directly assassinate Lotus Sun in the school. All the students in the school were locked up for protection, and even when they went to the bathroom, a teacher would accompany them. Wang Ling created a clone to sit in the classroom in his place. His real body teleported to the rooftop of number 60 high school and lazily basked in the sun. Leisurely, languid, peaceful, and ordinary. This was the high school life that Wang Ling wanted. He looked out the window at the school scenery with a profound gaze. From this angle, he could see the old stone sculpture at the main entrance of the school, and the palm leaves were gently blown by the breeze. But what was different from usual was that there was clearly a hint of an unusual and unfamiliar aura in the wind today. Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart, because high school life wasn't as peaceful as he had imagined, and something bad would happen almost every few days. But regarding Shadowstream's assassination challenge, Wang Ling already felt that he didn't need to do it himself, because he realized that number 60 high school wasn't as simple as it seemed. It was clearly just an ordinary foundation establishment high school, but there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers among the teachers. This was Wang Ling's latest discovery after entering the school. Among them, Wang Ling also realized that the expert closest to him was that old antique from the theory of history class. But who could tell him what on earth was up with this group of Shadowstream assassins who had suddenly gathered at his feet? Didn't they realize that he was here? What a bunch of blind people. On number 60 high school's rooftop, a group of assassins in black had suddenly gathered. The eye-catching red ribbons on their sleeves proved that they were first-class experts of Shadowstream. "Leader, the wind is very noisy today." "Leader, I think the boss is exaggerating. She's just a female student. Is it really worth it for us to take action?" Today's target is the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. According to our intelligence, it's very likely that a top expert has been assigned to protect her. Otherwise, Shadowstream's mission in the Xiao family compound a few days ago wouldn't have failed. The leader of the assassins spoke. His red ribbons were embroidered with several golden threads. He was the chief commander of this assassination operation. What's the specific strength of that expert? We haven't found out yet. The leader of the assassins was a little ashamed as he said, "The 2 black ribbon assassins we sent out that day had a 100% success rate in carrying out the mission. They only needed to complete this mission to advance to red ribbon. But we couldn't even find the corpse. It's very likely that it was destroyed along with the golden core in its body." "What the hell? Not even a corpse?" The red ribbon assassins broke out in a cold sweat. "So don't underestimate this battle. Also, remember that our target is only Lotus Sunday. Once we find the target, immediately assassinate her and then retreat. Don't complicate matters and leave unnecessary trouble behind." With a whoosh, the leader of the assassins waved his hand, and the group of assassins in black immediately dispersed. As the chief commander of this operation, he was one of the top 20 assassins in the world, and ranked 13th. He had carried out all kinds of terrifying missions for Shadowstream. He had gone through countless mountains of knives and seas of fire, and had stepped over countless corpses and souls to reach this step. He hadn't expected that his last mission before his promotion would be so simple. "As long as I can successfully complete this mission, I'll be able to enter Shadowstream's Gold Ribbon Management Team." Standing in the shadows on the rooftop, Suing looked down at the small and somewhat dilapidated campus and chuckled. In the end, it was just an ordinary high school that didn't even have a spirit-gathering array. Even if Huaguo Water Curtain Group had recently dispatched a security team, how could the teachers and school guards be so strong in the face of the first-class assassins that Shadowstream had sent out? Suing laughed self-deprecatingly and carefully fastened his mask. This was probably going to be his last mission. As a Virgo, even if this last mission didn't seem challenging at all, Suing decided that he would do it beautifully as usual. "The wind is really noisy today." Suddenly, a long sigh came from above Su Ying's head. Suing was startled at first, and then his eyes abruptly widened. Looking back, he abruptly saw a boy in the number 60 high school uniform, with a black buzz cut sitting leisurely on the roof of the single-story building, basking in the sun. Before coming to the rooftop, Suing had clearly checked that there was absolutely no one here. Then the problem was. Chapter 17. Maybe that wasn't the problem. The real problem was how long this person had been here. And how much information had he heard? He was a mighty peak late golden core cultivator. But he couldn't even sense the aura of a nearby Foundation establishment high school student? Suing felt that this was completely illogical. How long have you been here? Under the pitch-black mask, Suing couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. Wang Ling jumped down from the roof of the bungalow, patted the dust off his pants, and stared at Suing carefully. Since you said that the wind is very noisy today. Wang Ling's cold voice rang out in Su Ying's mind, sounding like an echo with a demonic quality. Suing was once again astonished. A Foundation establishment high school student could actually communicate telepathically? Suing. Later, I'll definitely ferret out this Chinibu hippie and kill him. Suing narrowed his eyes as he stared at Wang Ling. This was just an ordinary high school student, but it made his breathing inexplicably quicken. When people were nervous, their adrenal glands would secrete rapidly, and cultivators would usually release spiritual pressure as a warning to gauge each other's potential strength. This was just a Foundation establishment high school student. There was no way he could withstand his pressure. Suing kept comforting himself. Buzz, releasing all his spiritual pressure and bombarding Wang Ling with it. Tremble, young man. Quickly kneel and bow your head in submission. In the dead silence, time passed minute by minute. Wang Ling just raised his eyelids indifferently and looked at Suing. Suing was shocked. He had exerted all of his spiritual pressure on this youth, but it was completely useless. Forget a F***king collision. He couldn't even rub against him. Suing had killed countless people, and the corpses he had piled up were enough to form mountains. But Suing had never expected that the opponent who would make things difficult for him for the first time would actually be a high school student. At that moment, Suing was already drenched in cold sweat as he stared at Wang Ling. This was just an ordinary Foundation establishment high school student. But Suing was extremely nervous. At that moment, Suing swiftly dashed forward, clenched his fist and punched out. Whoosh! A huge gust of wind blew Wang Ling's short hair back. Actual combat was always the best way to test one's strength. Perhaps some people were born with a weaker perception of spiritual pressure. But this punch of his was indeed solid. Any Foundation establishment cultivator would die if they were hit by this punch, let alone this high school student in front of him, who had yet to undergo professional combat training. Combat training was an advanced course that could only be learned at Jindan University. Suing felt sorry for Wang Ling. In the end, he was just a Foundation establishment teenager. A future flower of the motherland, who had yet to properly enjoy life, had yet to see the great rivers and mountains of the motherland, had yet to fall in love, was about to die here because of being a busybody. Sayonara, he sighed in his heart as he threw a punch straight at Wang Ling's chest. Wang Ling's expression was as calm as ever. To be honest, he felt sorry for Suing. After all, he was just a cultivator who hadn't even reached the soul formation stage. Before he could properly enjoy the transformation of the nascent soul stage, the enlightenment of the soul formation stage, the truth of the transformation of yin and yang in the body synthesis stage, and the thrill of ascending to become an immortal in the tribulation stage. Because he punched himself, he was about to become a cripple. Boom! Like a broken golden bell. This punch landed on Wang Ling's chest as expected. There was a huge explosion, and in a split second the rooftop shook. Wang Ling was as firm as a rock and didn't budge an inch. Then with a boom, as the leader of the killers on the attack side, Suing looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Blood gushed out of his mouth like a fountain, and he was sent flying like a jet. Blood flowed from his eyes, nose, and mouth as he sprawled on the ground, foaming with blood. The intense pain made his expression contort to the extreme, and all the bones in his body instantly shattered. What on earth had happened? Suing felt as if his fist had hit a piece of godly iron. It was like striking a rock with an egg. In the moment of impact, the bones in his fist began to shatter inch by inch. This was just a F***King high school student. How could he have such a strong body? What the F***K? This was what the leader of the killers thought the moment before he fainted. Shadowstream's Red Ribbon Killers were very famous in the world of killers, and the most famous trio was the legendary Three Young Masters of Burying Love. The Three Young Masters of Burying Love: eldest Young Master Su Ying, second Young Master Su Feng, and third Young Master Su Jian. In the last few years, the third Young Master had shaken heaven and earth as he ran amok in the world of killers, and it could be said that there was no one who didn't know him. But who could have thought that this famous eldest Young Master would die before he could even start his mission? It was noon, and lunchtime at number 60 high school. Normally, as soon as class was over, a group of people would be seen running excitedly to the front of the canteen with spoons in their hands. But in the last few days of high alert, everyone had been forcibly confined to their classrooms, and the canteen had packed lunch boxes delivered to the classroom doors in batches. It could be said that they were bored to death. Sitting in the classroom, Teacher Pan quickly corrected the Tao Talisman's lessons notebooks from memory. Because of Shadowstream's letter of war, PE classes had been cancelled for the last few days. As number 60 high school's pioneer teacher, Teacher Pan had seized this opportunity once again. She had pushed back the progress of the Tao Talisman's lesson by a large margin. Super Chun twirled his pen in boredom, while Master of Dopey played with him. Both of them looked as if they had nothing left to live for. Damn! They had actually spent the whole morning writing from memory for this lousy talisman. It was really boring. So what if they drew it meticulously? Could they even get an SSR grade on the Tao Talisman's test? It wasn't just Super Chun. All the boys felt the same way. The few PE classes a week had been neglected just like that. In Super Chun's view, this was simply a waste of life. They were no different from salted fish. Looking around, Super Chun was surprised to find that there were in fact quite a few cool-headed top students in the class, as well as weirdos. For example, although Feather Lin usually looked careless, she was absolutely not careless when it came to studying. The most important thing was that this scary woman had gotten full marks in the Tao Talisman's lesson so far. Another example was Li Xianjing. This 1 meter and 90 centimeters tall coarse man was simply frighteningly quiet, his head lowered from beginning to end as he diligently wrote. Given Li Xuanjing's character, it was entirely due to her diligence that she had been able to enter the elite class. And the third person was Wang Ling. Perhaps this was a man's intuition, from the entrance interview to the Demon King, that Wang Ling had summoned in his first Tao Talisman's lesson. Wang Ling's grades had always been above average. Furthermore, Wang Ling's grades had been consistently in the middle in almost every dictation and quiz, which made Super Chun feel that Wang Ling wasn't as simple as he looked. Super Chun was a person who believed in coincidences, but so many coincidences happening to one person at the same time made him start to re-evaluate Wang Ling. Super Chun even suspected that the peerless expert who had wiped out the 2 Shadowstream killers in the Shao family compound that day and protected student Lotus Sun was actually Wang Ling himself. Of course, this was purely Super Chun's imagination, and he didn't have any proof. It was just that Super Chun felt that someone who could catch student Lotus Sun's eye definitely wasn't an ordinary person. Chapter 18. After so many years, Wang Ling finally realized that out of all the education policies that Father and Mother Wang had given him since he was young, there was actually one that was correct. Knowledge was power. Wang Ling didn't even know the basic physics of how force was reciprocal. He felt that it was necessary for the killer world to focus on cultural education. But Wang Ling had still underestimated the damage caused by his body's backlash. At that moment, Su Ying was already completely dead. He had only fainted before, but the backlash had been too strong and had caused severe damage to the golden core inside Su Ying's body. Wang Ling probed it with his spiritual senses and found that the golden core had completely lost its luster and was even darker than Melissa's. It was already out of shape and had directly turned into a pot of porridge in his dantian. The rooftop was usually completely sealed off. If Su Ying's body was found on the rooftop, It might be rumored to be another bizarre incident on campus. To avoid trouble, Wang Ling felt that it was necessary to find a relatively conspicuous place to move the body. The shade of the trees on the sports field seemed like a good place. It took no more than 5 seconds for Wang Ling to land with Su Ying's body, and he was about to teleport back. However, a voice abruptly came from behind him. Who is it? Wang Ling. He didn't dare turn his head, and felt a burning gaze on him, making him feel uncomfortable all over. But he was familiar with the owner of this voice. It was rough and full of vicissitudes. This was Chief School Guard Old Li's trademark voice. Wang Ling had a bad feeling in his heart, because this Old Li was someone he was trying his best to avoid. His rank had even surpassed that of Teacher Pan and Fujoshi Feather Lin. Wang Ling had said before that number 60 high school was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Old Antique was one of them, and Old Li's strength was actually very terrifying. Are you a student of our school? Seeing the school uniform Wang Ling was wearing, Old Li frowned and asked in an interrogative tone. This was an occupational hazard. Before retiring to become Chief School Guard, Old Li had been the captain of the 7 Stars Cultivation Special Forces. Seeing that Wang Ling still didn't speak, Old Li looked deeply at the body that Wang Ling had put down. Did you kill him? Wang Ling didn't want to admit it, but to be precise, this person should have committed suicide. He had punched his own holy body and then died from the backlash. How could he be blamed? He absolutely could not take the blame for this. Old Manly. Even though he could only see the silhouette, his instincts told Old Manly that it was definitely this guy who did it. Turn around. Old Manly shouted again, with a hint of warning in his voice. Wang Ling still didn't move. He really wanted to knock this old man out. However, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his strength and beat Old Manly to death. Turn around. Hurry up. Old Manly spoke for the second time. This time he helplessly turned his body around a little. Her fair and clean side profile gave off a feeling of half obscuring her face. Turn them all over. Old Manly enunciated each word. He was getting impatient. Wang Ling finally turned around, but covered his face with his hands. The Great Transfiguration spell took too long to charge up, and Wang Ling was truly at his wit's end. Old Manly said, "Put your hands down." F***CK. How many vicious prisoners had he interrogated? No one had ever made him shout more than 3 times in a row. Wang Ling sighed in his heart, and finally put his hands down, completely giving up resistance. Perhaps this was probably fate. When he saw Wang Ling's face, Old Manly couldn't help cursing. What the hell? Consultant Wang? Looking at the old man's excited eyes, Wang Ling knew that the other party had most likely recognized him. Old Manly rubbed his eyes, his pitch-black pupils scrutinizing every pore on Wang Ling's body to make sure that he wasn't mistaken. The person standing in front of him was the magic consultant whom the 7 Stars Cultivation Special Forces had specially hired 3 years ago, Wang Ling. Wang Ling remained silent. Perhaps his hot-headed decision to become a temporary magic consultant for the Special Forces for 2 days 3 years ago was the stupidest thing he had ever done in his life. And the biggest pain in the ass was that this old man whom he had only met once didn't forget him. He even King retired and came to the same school as him to join in on the fun. A nascent soul big shot came to be a school guard? What was he thinking? An unparalleled super expert came to study at an ordinary high school? What was he thinking? After not seeing each other for 3 years, when the two of them stood face to face again, they actually had a tacit understanding of each other's thoughts. After a moment of enigmatic silence, Old Manly weakly glanced at the corpse on the ground and realized that this Shadow Stream Red Ribbon Killer was actually the internationally renowned young master of burying love, Su Ying. Using his spiritual senses to check, Old Manly's heart immediately trembled. Damn, he had died too tragically. From his skull to his toes, there wasn't a single part of his body that was intact, and it had almost all been shattered. But these weren't fatal injuries. For a golden core cultivator, as long as their golden core could be preserved, even if their meridians were all broken or their bones cracked, there was still a chance of recovery. But this Su Ying's golden core was no longer just a matter of being shattered. It had been completely smashed to pieces. Combined with the fact that Wang Ling was standing right in front of him, alive and well, Old Man Li immediately thought of the reason for this kind of injury. It was definitely this blind guy who had made a move on Wang Ling first. That was why he had suffered such a backlash. Only Wang Ling had this kind of ability. Old Man Li remembered the last mission he had carried out before retiring from the 7-Star Special Forces 3 years ago. At that time, the foreign terrorist cultivation organization Dark Knight had attempted to unlock the seal on the gate between worlds and launch night raids on major cities in various countries. After receiving a lead, Old Man Li's group had immediately set off to stop Dark Knight's terrorist activities. In the end, all 7 of them had fallen into Dark Knight's trap and had been carelessly sucked into the gate between worlds. Old Man Li would never forget those 3 hellish days. Inside the gate between worlds, the air was filled with poisonous fog and corpse chi, and they couldn't find any water or herbs to replenish their spirit energy. The most frightening thing was that the demon kings had gathered in large groups. If any one of them was released, it would be a devastating blow to a modern city. For 3 whole days, the group had struggled to move forward. Some were separated, and some were scattered. In the end, only 3 of the 7 people were left. Old Man Li had thought that he was going to be buried here. But at that critical moment, Wang Ling had suddenly appeared and slain hundreds of demon kings, carving out a bloody path. Then, he had found everyone, and brought all 7 of them back in one piece. At that time, Wang Ling remembered that Old Man Li's group had been affected by the poisonous fog, and had been unconscious, so he hadn't thought about erasing their memories. But Wang Ling had never expected that Old Man Li would actually still be conscious when he had teleported back to the present world. He had really seen the person who had saved them. Old Man Li would never forget that moment. Wang Ling had only been a temporary spell consultant arranged by the higher-ups. Old Man Li and his team members had disdain for spell consultants like this. In their eyes, these spell consultants were a bunch of idiots who only knew theory. Thus, when Wang Ling had first joined the team, almost no one had liked him. But what Old Man Li hadn't expected was that the person who had saved them in the end would actually be Wang Ling. To be able to bring them out of the gate between worlds in one piece and slay hundreds of demon kings. This kind of strength had already surpassed Old Man Li's understanding at the time. By the time Old Man Li had recovered and been discharged from the hospital, Wang Ling had already left and disappeared without a trace. For Wang Ling, being forced to be a temporary spell consultant for 2 days 3 years ago had been a pure accident. Entering the gate between worlds and exposing his strength to bring everyone back was purely out of humanitarian assistance. Thus, there weren't many people in the world who knew Wang Ling's true strength, but Wang Ling knew all of them. And Old Man Li. It just so happened that he was the person Wang Ling had overlooked. But Old Man Li didn't know everything. He had always thought that Wang Ling only looked very young, but was in fact a 1,000-year-old monster. But the truth was, you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.